So I went over there, and the same thing. I was just trying to get ready for hunting season, and I saw this guy in there with this like it was a Hoyt. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like colored and everything. I'm like, I have to have one.
Gotta have it.
You know, I'm like,
I need that.
Like
I need
long
that.
stabilizers, and I'm like, what is this? And so it was one of those things that was
like, Dad, why is his so long?
He's blessed.
Maybe I'll have one of those. One day, all of this will be yours. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
Should be no surprise to anyone listening to this that back with Hoyt another season. I'm actually going to be shooting the AX2 aluminum this year.
You traitor.
But you're still going RX9.
Yeah, blacked
carbon,
out as always.
Blacked out.
Yeah.
Big surprise for
80
everyone.
pounds. Big surprise. Yeah.
But seriously, man, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Every year, it seems like we get a new Hoyt bow in our hands, and they're always a step above the last and just a step above everybody else.
Yeah, they're so consistent, man. Just their processes get better, every year. And we've really been excited about, as we've grown with Hoyt, we've brought some others in with us. And we just feel like the Hoyt family is growing, like the community, and we're really excited about the people that are involved, excited to be a part of that company. And it's really awesome.
So for anyone that's excited about Hoyt like Jared and I are, you can use the code HUNTR, HUNTR, on Hoyt.com.
Get serious, get Hoyt.
And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 258.
Yeah, see, there you go. I can keep you in a line on this one here. So.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys for listening wherever you're tuning in from. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Those are the three main platforms that we drop these on every week at 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, those are the two that we check the most frequently. And I am diligently today working through emails. So, and you guys reach out a lot. So it's humbling, and it's awesome to get to respond, but it does take some time. So we have some merch on the website. We appreciate you guys checking that out. We have some new stuff coming that I'm super excited about. I'm gonna, don't hold me to it, say end of July. We'll have all that.
We got a new website coming
kind of ready to rock. Yeah, that'll be on a new website, so you may see that too. You can use promo code HUNTR on most, if not all, of our partners' websites for some sort of discount on their stuff. Definitely check that out. Those guys, I think, appreciate seeing that we're sending some people their way too, so that helps us out. And other than that, here we go.
Here we go.
And joined today by the infamous
David Hauser.
Sorry to keep you waiting the whole time. Normally it's like 10 minutes. People have to wait in silence while we're doing our thing, and then we bring it.
No worries. It was worth just getting to see the intro from in the studio. So that was pretty awesome.
Like Josh was just like biting at the bit listening to us, but he was on mute, so he couldn't he couldn't do anything, for like 10 minutes.
We could sit here and just be like, Josh is a little sissy girl. He works out twice a week, and he can't say anything about it.
Like, I did not. No. Yeah. So, but anyways, it makes it a lot nicer in the studio, because then we can just cut through the fat and get to the point.
Right on. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, guys. I couldn't be more excited. Seeing the studio in person versus on the YouTube channel and everything is quite the difference, and it's very cool to be here.
It lives up to the expectations.
Absolutely, man.
Everything you dreamed it would be.
100% and more. So.
This is our war room.
It's pretty simple, honestly. Well, dude, frankly, that used to be my office. I used to work in there.
Oh, really?
When I worked for Jeremy so Stone Road Media, Jeremy's marketing company.
Okay.
Brianna used to work in there, and this wall we put in after the fact. Yeah, this was like the commonplace.
Yep.
In fact, the first 2 years of podcast, there was no wall there. It was, you could just see like Jeremy's desk in the background.
It was like a curtain. It was a curtain.
Maybe we put a curtain up at some point.
We had a curtain.
And then it was just last year, believe it or not, that I was like,
it really?
Yeah, I was like, we need some spice in here. So they were like gray walls or whatever. Blacked them out. Got the some of the decor going here. Got some of the mounts in, and yeah, it's coming around.
Absolutely. We need to get a Beast Broadhead sign in here somewhere. I see an opening.
Because you have a sign?
We're working on some banners, but
dude, if we could get a lit one, that'd be lit.
Let's get it up.
That would be lit. It's on the list. How about that?
That'd be awesome.
I've been putting that on display for them there in the meantime, just the package there.
That'll work. Let's do it.
Yeah. A little placement right there. So.
Yeah. No, it is cool. Like it definitely has a feeling when you get into a good podcast and you're 2 hours deep into it, but you're in this zone. Like, I have no idea what's happening out there.
Yeah. Well, you saw there's no windows like in this building. It's kind of like dungeness. So from an office standpoint, it kind of sucked. It was
like the downstairs, they had all the good stuff upstairs.
Yeah, but from a studio standpoint, it's been working out pretty good.
100%.
Yeah, right. Very soundproof down here.
We don't hear anything. And the ladies aren't upstairs anymore either. So it's just
my wife will
no more elephants.
My wife texts me all the time. She's like, "Man, that storm was terrible." I'm like, "What?"
For real?
I have no idea. I can't hear anything down here. Like no thunder, nothing. Yeah.
I popped my head out to see when you were coming. It looked like it rained a bit on your.
Yeah, not too bad. It looked a lot worse than it actually was. It rained for just the last couple minutes of the drive, but nothing too terrible.
Yeah.
I saw something. I don't know if it was yesterday. I think it was 2 days ago. So far in 2025, it has rained 72% of the days.
Whoa.
Or some moisture, like could have been snow too, but there have been precipitation for 72% of days. It was like 121 out of 150 days or something like that.
What is that? What is it normally? Do you know?
What's the
baseline?
I don't know. We're way over the top. In fact, I was talking to a guy in Oklahoma, and he was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "We're like at what we get for the whole year already, like 30 inches." And I was like, "Oh, I wonder what we got." And I'm like, "We're at 35." He's like, "Geez."
It has been moist.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot. We've definitely, the entire East has, like, I've got all the farms and that little raindrop thing or whatever that Josh told us about.
Yeah, that's right.
And
he did tell us about that, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. And so like, I'm always constantly looking and like, so right now this is for the year. Kentucky has 36 inches, 31 here, 29 in Ohio, 14 in Illinois.
Wow.
And that big change.
You got any other states you're keeping an eye on precip for?
I'm not as ingrained in the like the food plot side of things as you guys are, and Josh, of course. But
are you going out of state to hunt?
Yeah, I always go out in Western Illinois. I hunt with a good friend of mine out there.
Yeah, well, that's where we're watching. We got the 2 inches in the last 24 hours, I think. So good moisture there.
Heck yeah.
You don't know it yet, but yeah, she's growing for you.
She's moist and fertile.
Well, that's cool. You might not be far from us. We could, after the podcast, we figure out exactly where.
Yeah, we can't disclose any
specific, top secret, obviously.
Yeah,
longitude, latitude. That could get a little. You'd have to edit that out. That's where the big ones.
I'll bet you're passing us. Not too far before you get there.
Okay,
but that's cool. Are you going out this year?
Yeah, I'll go out probably like first week in November or so.
You go every year?
Yeah, been going about every year for a good many years. So
you've been doing all right out there?
Yeah, man. I've killed a couple out there. It's kind of one of those things, how like being so far away, it's a little prohibitive for like unless you allocate so much time to go out there and really find the deer and pattern. Cell cameras help, but it's just not something that especially with Beast and taking off and wife and kids, we that stage of life to where not spending weeks, months out west, but maybe someday when the kids get bigger, we can spend a little more time out there chasing big deer. Josh is trying to get us to move to Iowa in the worst kind of way.
Everybody that lives in Iowa is always trying to get all of us to move out there.
Is that because they're lonely?
I don't know. I mean, they're not wrong. We've been and we've seen, and I just and that's why you could kill 3 of those a year. I mean, in theory, like from
but we always go back to like even Western Illinois. It's like the magic of going out there is because we're from here, which is not there.
Yeah.
So when you go out there and you experience that Midwest deer hunt, it's so cool because it's a rarity in your life. Mm-hmm. If you lived out there all the time, I think eventually you'd be like, this is the new norm.
Fair.
That's the double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or it's one that we just have to embrace because we're here. And
maybe it's just an excuse of why we just keep saying we're not moving out there.
So we just say we like it better. But, yeah. That is the thing, though, because Skip's always doing that. Josh is always doing that. It's like every chance they get, they're like, well, you could just move here. I'm like, yeah, but you understand, like, I have a business here. Like I have family here. Like I can't. I can't.
They're like, yeah, but did you see this deer?
It is tempting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh's famous line is, he's like, well, you're not a tree, so you can just move back if you do come out and hate it. I'm like, that's a fair point. But
that's a good, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what is tying you to this area? Do you got family? Or?
Yeah, so my wife Kelly and I, our family all live like within a few miles of us. So it's just kind of, it's home. It's where, obviously our roots are down. We built our house here and everything. So, to move out there away from all of our family members for sure.
How old are your kids?
So my son just turned 4, Caden, and my daughter Hadley will be 2 in September. So
then
they'll be starting school and everything. So it's one of those things that
they have like other nieces and nephews in that compound too, or
I have so I have
friends of theirs, I guess.
I have 4 nieces and a nephew.
Yeah.
So we have everybody's within about 10 15 minutes. It's really cool to get all the kids together and everything. So
it's hard to leave that
for sure. And maybe someday, I'd love to, be able to be out there long enough to get like obviously kill $3 a year, but it's not something on the immediate trajectory. Josh is working on Kelly pretty hard. He's like telling her all the reasons why I was awesome. He's like, you'll love it here. Just come try it. So if he has anything to do with it, we'll be out there before too long. But Kelly's got her a pretty firm.
How are you feeling about it? I mean, obviously, Kelly. Yeah, I mean, the kids. That's a big part.
Yeah,
of it.
for sure. I mean, obviously, I love the kids to grow up, with their family around and everything. But as far as maybe someday to spend, half the year out there. I mean, I think you need 6 months and a day to get residency. So, resident tag. So, like I said, Josh has laid this all out in elaborate detail.
It's got me thinking I could reduce my ice cream sales to 6 months out of the year. And make it happen.
You're not that far off right now.
I'm not that far off. I got like two months to go. We can figure something out.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll go.
Maybe someday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we just had Kevin Marrow in, who's from your area, and he said, was it?
Was it Jeremy? And
Jeremy Hauser?
Yeah, it's my cousin.
Yeah, he knows your cousin and his wife pretty. Yeah, Courtney?
Yeah, Courtney.
That
what a
sounds
small
right.
world. Yeah, they live a few miles down the road from me as well, so the whole family's right in the same area, so that's part of the...
Yeah.
So Kevin's not far from me. Kevin would be Trad Geeks was like the YouTube channel that he started.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Okay. I've heard the name before. I just never put the connection that he was local. I didn't know you guys were this close, honestly.
Yeah, we had no idea. Like at all.
Yeah, I remember Josh said about doing the podcast with you dudes, and then obviously he came on to Team Beast, and I was like, I saw the Instagram post. I'm like, I've seen that.
Was Ultimate Outdoors.
I've seen that sign somewhere, and I'm like, you guys
did you drive past that on the way in?
I honestly didn't pay attention because I've seen the sign, but I just don't know exactly where it is. So
it's right in Holiday Park. It'd be
that's Monroeville.
It's 380 or 380 turns into
Golden Mile
Highway coming into Monroeville. That's where that's at. Have you been to that bow shop before?
I've just been passing. Never been in there.
Ultimate Outdoors. We've been going there since. I mean, I've been going there since I was
long time.
10 years old.
Did they have Beast Broadheads there?
If they don't, they should.
I was gonna say we're gonna make that happen.
If not, we definitely should make it happen.
We better call them as soon as this is over.
We've been talking.
I'm going on Monday if you want me to take it.
You need to talk to Tim.
I didn't bring our thing so you can do the 3-point whatever.
It's in the truck.
Oh boy.
You need to talk to Tim about the Hunter night that we were going to do down there.
All right.
We're just going to do like an evening at Ultimate Outdoors where we just go down and hang out. Maybe we shoot techno or something.
What do you think? You think that'd be fun? You think people will come to something like that?
Dude, absolutely. I mean, if they don't, it'll still be fun if there's techno hunt. I mean, that's always great.
Hang out at the bow shop type of thing on a August evening or something.
You can only do like, 2 people at a time in the techno hunt though.
That's
cool. But I think just like hanging. I mean, really, it's hopefully we're bringing Tim and those guys business too.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just hanging out and chatting, bullshitting with people.
I would be into. It would be fun.
Yeah,
it's a weird mindset to get over. Be like, if I go, people will come to hang out with us. But you'd hope for that to be.
I mean, you guys are kind of a big deal. So
we don't think so. But it would be cool to hang. I mean, if we could benefit those guys, it would be fun.
100%.
Well, they just every time we're down there, and it's not like a huge deal, but Tim would just be like, like a bunch of guys come in and are like, hey, is this like where Jared and Jeremy bring their bows? And he's like, yeah, this is.
Well, it's fun.
Like almost like we just make it up. It's like, no, that's our bow shop.
It's fun because you know how I think guys that own bow shops are just everybody that comes in there knows everything. And so they're probably just so numb to just being like, oh yeah. Everybody wants to be like, oh, I know so and so. I met Josh Bowe, I know Ted Nugent, or run down the list. And I never said anything to those guys because I know Tim's not impressed. And so I'm like, fine, I'm not here to impress anybody, And we just did everything. And eventually he was like, are you guys, guess you're doing a thing, huh? Pretty cool. A lot of people are asking about this or that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're doing. And then I brought that in this past year. Every year, typically I don't see them for a better part of the fall because it's like I check in September, we do our final tune-up, and then I'm hunting. Or working or whatever, and then I'll come back in the following year earlier than most people. I'll be there March, April. I'm gonna get ready for TAC.
Also, you're not there September 30th. The big October 1 opener here in PA. You're not that guy.
Yeah, hey, I need a crossbow today. I'm hunting later tomorrow.
Yeah. Can you bore sight this thing?
Yeah. And so that's my chance. Every year I bring in my skull caps from the year before, and they're always stoked for me and stuff. So that's fun.
That's because the more discussions we have with those guys, and especially not knocking on crossbows, but with the crossbow thing is they're so busy through the season even. Those guys don't get to hunt at all.
Yeah. It's become more of that because of the shift to crossbows. A lot guys would get all their work done in the summer and leading up to, and then it was about mid-October, they might get some time to sneak out and hunt now. Now it's like everybody's coming in on October 1st or through the month of October, and they're like, hey, I need, either they're looking to buy a new setup like a crossbow, or they're blowing up. They said they're like all the time guys are coming in and they're like having issues with their stuff and they're having to work on it like now through the entire season.
Yeah, because guys will literally come in and be like, oh, like the rut's this weekend, and they're like, I need to buy a crossbow so I can go hunt the rut.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
So their dynamic has shifted a lot, and I feel for them. I mean, if we can ever get those guys, like, whatever, comp them for a hunt, or somehow like make room so that they can go and get to hunt. I mean, I know those guys love to hunt. They just, I don't think they've been in the woods in like 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, wow. Breaks my heart, kind of.
My dad enjoyed it down there, like, because I've been on him. I'm like, hey, dude, it's right down from work. Just stop. He works at UPMC East. I was like, just stop down and take your bow to Tim. I said, you won't even have to drop it off. I said, just have him look over stuff, make sure timing and everything's good, shoot a couple arrows, just feel good about it. Yeah. And I think it was cool. He was like, yeah, Tim and I hung out for like a half hour, just kind of, he went over everything and we just adjusted some stuff, and yeah, he was good. Yeah. He was out of there. Enough of that he like called me and was like fired up about it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, dude, are you like with your role at Beast, are you dealing with dealers quite a bit? Is that like on your plate, or?
We actually have a rep group on board now that is covering essentially all 50 states. So they're kind of out there. Those are our point of contact with our dealers, like the business to business side of things. Yeah. That all the shops have reps for their different brands, so they're actually our boots on the ground essentially. But we still deal with a lot of dealers through customer service and other things that way. But the dealer business is something that any archery brand, they're such a massive part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And all the dealers out there listening that have Beast Broadheads, certainly want to thank you guys for the support. And it's just something that walking in a store and seeing them hanging there is just every time it's just one of those things.
Yeah,
it's
that's awesome, man.
You can't really believe it. It's a really cool thing. And that's why I was curious they had them at your local shop, and anybody out there, it's just a big part of the team and one mission. So
yeah,
I'm gonna say, I'm just trying to recall. I mean, I wasn't studying like the broad. It's been there since I was 10 years old. They have a glass case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's all chalked up. And there's, the first broadhead they ever recommended to me was a Slick Trick when I was like 10 years old. But if not, we'll have to get them in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll pick it up. Do you have any idea like how many dealers you guys are in now?
Honestly, I don't. We've had a massive surge this year, especially like after last year, like when basically we're essentially 12 months into like an official selling season. We really were able to start shipping like June of last year, June of 2024. So our existing dealer network that has just massively expanded in the last 12 months. And I would honestly have to get an accurate count. It's been overwhelming.
I'm sure you guys' phones have been like ringing off the hook.
Yeah, man, it's been.
Because you guys did online only for a period of time, correct? Or?
Yeah, at the very beginning, essentially just for being able to fulfill production size orders. We launched in. And I can, we can digress and kind of walk through the whole path if you want to. It's totally up to you. But we launched in essentially September 30th of 2023, and we sold out in like 30 seconds. Yep. And then we restocked, and it was gone again. So it was like we realized
were those like super limited quantities?
Yeah, it was lower quantity, but we had a ton of broadheads, so we were blown away at the support and overwhelming. From fans and everybody just really just getting behind the mission of the new technology. So it's been quite the ride, man. And like I said, essentially a year in, and that dealer network is just really expanding. I mean, it's getting bigger every day. I see the orders coming through with the selling season is essentially upon us now.
Yeah, we're in it.
So, yeah, it's been incredible. I couldn't have asked for a better situation for sure with the response.
Yeah.
Well, dude, let's back up a little bit on you. So, born and raised in Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir. Born and raised Western Pennsylvania. Kelly and I built our house in the same hometown that I was born in. So, yeah, born and raised in PA. I went to a small high school. About 100-ish kids graduated with me. Yeah, super small.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I went
what
to
was the high school?
Marion Center.
Oh, yeah, we know Marion Center.
Oh, you guys know Marion Center?
Oh, yeah.
I guess
I was hunting in Marion Center the other day. I
was
hunting with Lauer the other day, turkey hunting.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. But.
So you guys know Marion Center. So, yeah I went to high school there, and throughout my entire essentially high school career, I was shooting competitive archery. That's what bow hunting got me into archery, and then essentially archery got me into the other side of the archery industry. So I started shooting a bow probably when I was about I wouldn't say like maybe like 11 or 12. My dad took me up to this tiny bow shop, hole in the wall. It was called Bill's Archery back in the day, and he was the guy.
Still around?
No, it's not around anymore.
It's ringing a bell.
Yeah, I mean, you may have, if you ever up in that area, it was about kind of like the go-to spot. And Dad took me there when I was a kid, and he made me pay for half of my first bow to make sure that I would actually use it.
Right.
Good man.
With my hard-earned weed-eating money. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I'm going to shoot this thing. And
Yeah, you better use it.
Yeah, for sure. So I was practicing, hunted a little bit, and
What'd you get was the first bow?
It was a Bear Instinct.
Oh, yeah.
40-ish pounds, 11-year-old me. It was legal to hunt, so I was ready to go. And
Yeah.
that kind of got me into archery. And then we'd go and shoot, Sunday mornings, the local 3D shoots. They set up the targets, and we'd go out there and practice. And then I was doing that, and I was really enjoying it. It was just a fun way to get ready for hunting season. That's all it was. That's how it started.
It was just a mechanism to be better during the bow season.
Exactly, 100%. So, I got into that, and there's a place called Indiana Bow and Gun Club up in Indiana, PA. They have an awesome indoor range.
I think a ton of you are going to know. If I don't know exactly where it's at, a lot of our listeners are going to be like, I know exactly where it's at.
So it's crazy that, like, you guys being local, that, like, that you
we got the local
you can
connection.
Pinpoint, like,
we know.
Like,
we know.
We're just talking about
that
cousin.
sheets on the corner? Yeah. I know the sheets.
Yeah.
So I went over there, and the same thing. I was just trying to get ready for hunting season, and I saw this guy in there with this, like, it was a Hoyt. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was, like, colored and everything. I'm like, I have to have one.
Gotta have it.
I'm like,
I need that.
Like,
I need
long
that.
stabilizers, and I'm like, what is this? And so it was one of those things that was
like, Dad, why is his so long?
He's blessed.
Maybe I'll have one of those. So one day all of this will be yours.
So just like the target bow side of things, I saw that, and it just sparked my interest. And I just started shooting competitively, taking a little bit more serious, going to some IBO shoots, shooting in the young adult division. It was like the 13, 14, and then I shot an event up in Seven Springs, actually, where I met you two dudes, and I won the IBO. I was like 13. I won the IBO event up there, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. And I really just started taking it more seriously from there, and it just kind of continued to catapult. And then that led into having a professional contract. I shot for Hoyt for like 6 or 7 years. They were my title sponsor. I traveled all over the country and world shooting events. I shot ASA, NFAA, USA Archery. Went to the World Championships when I was Junior World Championships. I went there. When we went to Thailand, all kind of crazy. Played France, every other once a year. So it was just shooting the tour, man. It was crazy. It was just every weekend. It seemed that we were at an event.
So that's a full-time gig?
That's what I was doing full-time. Yeah. I was going to college and shooting full-time, and then that was kind of that's what I think my senior year, I think I missed like 50-some days of school. I don't know how they let me graduate. My grades must have been good enough.
These get degrees.
They let me out. But so after high school, I was still shooting full-time, traveling all over the place. I got accepted to Penn State, and I was going to go for chemical engineering, and I was like, okay, this is something that the path I wanted to go down. But then
Lee Lukoski here.
But then what happened was
I went to shoot 200s every year.
Yeah, man. Josh was trying to get us out there anyway. But I was going to go from chemical engineering, and my plan was like petroleum natural gas. So like I come
Which makes sense from our area.
Absolutely. So I come from like a long lineage of like entrepreneurs. So my grandpa was in the coal industry his entire life, and then my dad actually got in shallow gas wells and like the Marcellus shale support and things like that up in this area. Anybody that's not familiar, it's like
we're in the epicenter.
Yeah, it was like the backbone of this area. It was just a absolute boom there for a long time. So seeing them in business, I was always curious about, being an entrepreneur and working for myself. But I was like just shooting, like crazy and trying to go to college. But like during that time, so I was like, but my dad always told me, he's like, well, you're not ever going to work for me, kind of pave your own path. Because it was just something that he worked for my grandpa, and I think it was something he wanted me to go to college and kind of take that route. So, but I saw what was possible, with hard work and dedication. Because Grandpa really, he came from like less than absolutely nothing. He built an absolute empire from nothing. Very proud of him for that, and him showing me the path. And I kind of got down this road definitely for myself and my family, but I saw him like with hard work and dedication, this is what's possible. So I was applying that to archery at the time. But the chemical engineering side with schooling, because of the Marcellus shale, well then it's very political here in PA. So the governor, there's a lot of things kind of coming up. And I'm like, I really don't want my success to be tied to who's essentially, the governor who's running the state. So I transitioned that to mechanical engineering. And then I went up to Penn State Du Bois, did 2 years up there. And then I had to finish
Which they're closing.
Really?
Yeah.
No way. That place was awesome. There's like 3 buildings. It was like 15 kids in your class. It was perfect.
Du Bois, the Fayette one up here, and like 5 other ones or something.
Wow. They're closing this one up here?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, in 2 years.
Wow. I assume they're replacing it with like online stuff.
I don't know. They're just collapsing the branches because we have 13 of them at Penn State, but 7 of them are getting collapsed.
Well, dang, I'm glad I'm done now because
I
would have had a lot more of a commute.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So I went up to there for 2 years, and then I had to finish out in State College at main campus. So then finished up there as many classes as I could, and then I was, commuting out to State College. But it was like was shooting and everything, and then
you were driving to State College.
I drove to Du Bois every morning. That was like an hour and change, and I commuted to State College every day. It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that.
Holy cow, dude!
One way.
Yeah,
so.
that's a hike.
Did Penn State have some sort of like an archery scholarship? Like, did you get any kind of assistance through school or
not with archery? I'm not sure how that was with that. I feel like I had some like academia type ones, but I don't know if there was.
I don't think there was anything on that. I took a bow hunting class at Penn State.
Oh no!
Like it literally accredited. Like it was a gym credit but it was bow hunting.
Wow!
Not archery.
That's cool.
Like bow hunting. Yeah, I got an A because I killed a buck that year.
I got an A.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
that was it.
That's
he was
what
like, you don't. He's like, you don't have to come back to class. I'm like, it's bow hunting.
You won.
I'll be here.
That's the most Pennsylvania type. I got an A because I killed a buck in my
bow
hunting
I brought it in. I brought the picture in. He's like, great. Wrote it in. He's like, you don't have to come back.
Wow. Very cool.
Sorry.
No worries. But yeah, so I in college there, I was still shooting full time. I think Kelly and I we started building our house, so there was a ton going on.
Wow.
And I graduated in 2019 and finished with my degree in mechanical engineering. But then obviously that's when the whole world got turned upside down not long after that. So Kelly and I we got married in December of 2019, and I had started an engineering company. Out of college, I'm like, archery, it's super performance based. So you could be doing great, making really, really good money in the professional side of things. And there's people that do it and they do incredibly well. And it was just something that there's like a time frame that there's like an inflection point there with kind of, which, I mean, hey, it makes sense if you're in golf, anything like that. So it's not like kind of targeting like the archery side, but I'm like, I knew that there was essentially an expiration date on when you could be, really be hyper successful. So I also trying to have some foresight. I'm like, I would love for this not to be my only thing now that, Kelly and I are building a house and,
Yeah, well, you knew the travel demands and everything that came with it.
For sure. I was gone so much. So I was like, it was just kind of in the back of my mind. So I started an LLC, just like an engineering company. Well, then, COVID hits and everybody's life is just like completely upended. So all the events are canceled. We have I was literally practicing for an event when we got the email. Like we shot a couple events early 2020 and then it was completely like
done
and it like nobody had any idea, is it going to be a month, 6 months? Well, then if you can't go compete, you can't make any money. So I was like, definitely don't want I don't want to stick around and really see what happens here. So I'm like, in the meantime, I'll just scale my engineering company and try to see what that would be like. I'm like, I've always wanted to kind of be my own business owner and be an entrepreneur, so I'm like, I'm gonna give this a crack. So
what kind of engineering company? What was that like tailored to?
So it was really tailored towards honestly like what Josh and I are doing now.
It was archery based?
No, product development. So like say you had an idea, like a lot of my early clients were companies that had ideas for products that they wanted to bring to market, or they had an existing product that they wanted to improve on. But I kind of got into
the archer
that
space for
in everything.
Anything.
I was doing stuff like, you name it, like sheet metal fabrication.
Interesting.
Any type.
How are you marketing yourself? Just as like a generalist engineering firm? Or?
Yeah, so I was actually finding a lot of my stuff on like the freelance websites online, like clientele that almost like they'd put a listing out there for I need X.
You put in a bid or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd get established that way. So it was going, like I said, I was building it up and it was going it was going well. I was a couple months in trying to figure it out because like SolidWorks is the CAD software I use. So that's where taking like a 2-dimensional sketch and then that's how you create a 3D model of something. So that's the program that I was using. Learned that in college, took like one class on it. So
I took CAD in high school.
Right on, man.
Yeah. That guy was a hunter too.
Nice.
We didn't have that in Marion Center.
No.
But so SolidWorks, I was like, okay, I'm like, I learned about that, and I was like, I'll just kind of go down that path. So then that's when I started to pick up some work and going down that. And I'm like, okay, and I could work, and I was working from home. Obviously, COVID shut down. I was like, obviously, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, best case scenario right now is like you at least had a plan B to the archery, which is non-existent at this point.
Exactly, and I was like thankful that I had that degree. I'm like, okay, I can kind of be a little nimble here and kind of go about it that way. So then I was like sitting in my office one day, and it was like funny that you guys were saying about like no windows in here. Someday Josh, when he comes out to the house, I have to show him where like Beast started, because like my office was downstairs and like no, in like the basement, like no windows. Because when Kelly and I built the house, like I have a 20-yard indoor range because I was a professional archer.
Yeah,
I wasn't a mechanical engineer by trade, so like my office was like adjacent to my archery range, and it was just like a 12 by 10 or 12 room with no windows. And I'm like, heck, this is my new office. So like I'm sitting back in that room the one day, and my phone rings, and it's just a random Ohio number. So I answer the phone. I'm like, hello, this is David. It's like this incredibly excited person on the other end. It's like, what's up, dude? He's like, this is Josh Bowmore. How are you doing today? And Josh and I didn't.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And Josh,
no
and I
exaggeration.
we didn't know each other. So he called me up, and he's like, hey, man, I heard you're a mechanical engineer and an archer, and I have all these projects I'm working on with Bowmore Archery. And he's like, I'd love to, have a conversation about you kind of helping on some of these projects. And I was like, absolutely. I'm like, my new engineering company plus my skill set in my knowledge of the industry, I'm like, it's a perfect match.
Right in the wheelhouse.
So
was there a mutual connection there, or how did he...
Yeah, actually, Levi Morgan is the one that connected Josh
contact.
And I. Yeah, he was.
He's
Josh
like, David knows his shit.
Yeah, because Josh is like, I know. He's like, I need an engineer, but he's an archer. And Levi's like, I have just.
I got a guy.
So shout out for that connection there. But it's crazy how life works, man. You know what I mean?
Well, funny enough, Levi lives 15 minutes from here.
Yeah, that's what I was looking. I'm like, he's like not far at all from
right up over here.
So Josh calls me up, and he sends me over the initial, and it was just off to the races, man. I mean, we were doing all kind of different projects, and the Broadhead wasn't even it hadn't even entered the chat yet. We hadn't started on that project. So I was came on as like an engineer for Bowmore Archery. Here's through my engineering company doing product design. He'd call me, but we immediately started to click like super well. Like,
did he have anything out at this time, David? Like, was the nose button?
The nose button was out, and then one of the earliest, I think the nose button shortly after the grip tape, and then the stabilizers, and then like the first product that we collaborated on was the peep tuner.
Okay.
So that was one of the first ones that I kind of was working on them with. So everything, we were just working on like 20 different projects. I mean, we were just in the weeds on all these things. And like I said, at the time, I was just like an engineer for the brand. And shortly after Kelly had our son Caden, Josh called me up and was like, hey man, he's like, you're crushing. He's like, I see the vision here. And the Broadhead had then entered into the business model. So we began on Beast in early, I think it was February of 2021 is when we started on, and nothing was working, for the record, at all. Epic failure after epic failure. We were like 6 months in, beating our head off the wall, and he called me up and he's like, hey dude, he's like, I want you to, something bigger than just being kind of an engineer. He's like, I want you to do this deal with me and come in on Beast as a part owner. And I was like, I was so taken back, and for the opportunity that like I was like, obviously, like I've talked to Kelly. Yeah, I know what my answer would be, but it's something that and I have to give massive credit to her because I like pitched it to her, and she like didn't even let me finish. She's like, absolutely, go for it. So it's just cool. Like, she had never met Josh or Sarah. I'd never met Josh yet in person either. And it was just like taking this massive like risk.
Sure.
We have a little boy, a newborn, and she's just like, go all in. She's like, you can do it. And just believed it. I think she believed in me almost more than I believed in myself. So it was like,
it's a good woman to have behind you.
Yeah, man. It's, they say like, your success is essentially defined, I'm butchering the saying, but by the woman behind you at your side. And it's there's so much truth to that, because I have to credit a lot of that to her. She'd have been like, could have been like, absolutely not, that's crazy. What do you mean? What do you mean
crazy. Who is this guy?
What do you mean we're gonna make negative money until we figured this out? Because so we were just like, she said go for it. She said you can do it. And so absolute massive support. I mean, I seriously, it's one of those things that, because it was also then a year and a half, 2 years of effort after that.
I was going to say, I mean, we're talking 2020.
Yeah, we're in 2021. We sold our first Broadhead at the end of 2023, and essentially couldn't keep up, and we sold out for 6 months. So like really, it's like a 2.5 or 3.5 year process in there that of just total uncertainty. And she's like,
were you prepared for that? I mean, did you understand what was kind of coming there?
So I did, and I did, but I knew that everything would take longer than expected. But at the same time, the challenges I was not prepared for. I had never. It was like waking up every day and just getting kicked in the face because it was just failure after failure after failure. Dozens.
In terms of just from an engineering standpoint, like, hey, this is not going to work. We're not able to source the products. It's just not coming together.
There's just so many complexities that people just don't quite understand. And I mean, I was honestly didn't either until you're in it every single day.
Right.
Like everybody has a great idea, but it's then getting that idea to a tangible item that you can produce, and then also produce at the volume to keep the customer base to actually build a profitable business. And then like every product comes from all over the world, so there's like language barriers, there's time change differences. There's like some of our vendors we worked with for 1.5 years before we even got a sample. Like our spring vendor in the United Kingdom, we worked for them for over 1.5 years, and they continued to tell us it was impossible what we needed. And it was just like, we just would not take no for an answer on everything. And it was just a funny story is like the dual blade firing technology of Beast, and we can get into the technology aspect, but this kind of follows suit with where we're at in the conversation is after 1.5 years, we had a product that was ready to go, and Josh and Sarah were getting ready to go to Africa. And he's like, it's not good enough yet. I know it can be better. It was ready to sell. We could have sold it. Version 1, started making some money and be like, hey guys, surprise, a year later, version 2. But he's like, absolutely not. And I 100% supported and agreed with him. I'm like, this just isn't quite perfect. Like, we know it can be better. So we threw everything in the garbage.
What was that? I mean, what were the main things you felt like were lacking?
So the big thing was like the blade technology with the blade firing, like refining that was just such a process to get the blades to where they can bilaterally dual blade fire. So if one deployment tab or the other is contacted, that both blades fire open every single time. Because he saw that one time and he's like, we have to have that. And it was just a non-negotiable, like this is a truth behind the product that it has to do that every single time. So to answer your question, like that first version, like the aesthetic, I mean, it didn't feel like, you look at something like now, like it seems so obvious looking at the Beast, right? It just like everything makes sense. But we'll definitely get some photos of that first design out because I think people think it was cool. But
and it looks pretty different.
It looks incredibly different. The tip is very bulbous. It's not quite as needly, so it doesn't aesthetically appear that it's going to penetrate as I got some on the table there. The spring was actually oriented different. The size of the spring was different. So much about the technology. It just was, I would say, maybe a 60% of the way to what we have now. Like there was still...
These things terrify me, by the way. You saw what happened the last time I grabbed one.
Yeah, Josh is getting a letter about that.
Yeah, pretty wicked. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer.
So I'm sorry, I was trying to envision there. You said that the tip was more bulbous.
Yeah, so the tip was much more bulbous, as in larger
versus
diameter.
like that, sharp
so
needle
super
type.
accurate looking, just tapered. And there was just a lot of things on the table that we still kind of had. We had a solution, but it wasn't something that we knew that we could take it to the 100% upper limit and find that limit and then, scale it to where it needs to be. So the tip was much more bulbous. The blade angle, the geometry, the spring force wasn't quite to what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just something that the spring was in a different orientation, and it was just basically, we know we have to start over because we'd exhausted every resource mentally and like mechanically to get to that first iteration. So it was like, okay, kind of circle back to when like Kelly's like, go for it, you got this. I'm like, all right, a years went by and then we had to throw it all away and start over and redo that again.
Redo it.
But it was just,
but you know what you're on to. You're
Yeah,
like, now I know what now I need to know what happened.
it was one of those things that, you couldn't look back in 20 years and be like, what if we had just tried a little bit harder?
Well, especially with this market too. I mean, it is a saturated market.
100%.
Right. And it is, I always kind of say like, it's very like niche or clicky, right? Like there's guys that like when I grew up, it was like you shot Muzzy or you shot Rage or you shot G5, whatever it is, right? Like, so when you look at that and you start to come out into this space, like, you almost have one shot to really make a dent into the market.
And that's a great way to frame that because you only get that opportunity one time,
Mm-hmm.
and if we underwhelm the consumer base, with any product now or in the future, like our primary goal is to just absolutely exceed expectations and make it the best we possibly can because we're all bow hunters. I mean, we didn't just get into this because we want to start a broadhead company. It was like, here's a list of things that are non-negotiables that we want to fix. Here's problems we've all had. And we're like, we wanted something truly different. Like, what are all the failures we ever had? Why are these certain details, not optimum? And it's like, we have to fix that and make the absolute best broadhead that's ever created.
I know I keep interjecting, but what were some of the main issues that you guys were seeing with broadheads on the market?
So, I mean, obviously Beast is no bands, no collars, no plastic. Everything inside the ferrule is all stainless steel.
Yeah.
So bands and collars is something that I feel like everybody's experienced. And, and there's a lot of great broadheads out there that use bands or collars, but it's just something that, to us, there's like a next level I feel like that we could achieve with innovation in the space,
Not necessary. Yeah, it's not necessary. There should be a better way.
Yeah, like, is there a better way? And that's what asking those questions is kind of like what drives innovation. Even like the example of like with like patents, for example. Like, patents are
Here's a Beast Band-Aid. You see they're putting those in there now?
No, I know, I love that.
Like patents are public information because it drives innovation. So that's something that there had to be a better way, and it was like innovate and come out with something truly different.
That is a big one. Those were getting annoying. I know it wasn't until, it's got to be the past couple of years that guys, there's Rage, I know, and there's like the T3, I think, with a G5.
Or Mega Meat.
Or the Mega Meat type thing. Yeah, those are the only ones I can think of that have more of like a click-in type of technology.
I definitely know what you're
It's not been until very recently, like past couple of years.
Yeah, and that's where like when we saw what this could be with, something so vastly different that it was just like we knew that we had something really special. I think that's what drove so much of the effort and the drive behind knowing that, we could see the finish line, but we didn't know how to get there. But we knew that once we did, that looking back, it would be absolutely, it was the right path. But just then kind of to circle back on like the dual blade firing aspect that I was mentioning that, Josh had said he had called me the one time and we were like 2 years in or whatever. And it was just like so many issues. Like it took us like 600 and some iterations to get to the first function, like production ready part.
Wow.
Tips, blade locks, spring. I mean, there's so many components that are so technical that have to work in such unison that for it to function every single time, that it was a marathon. And it was just one of those things that we were just running into problems and like we're a great team at the end of the day. I feel like we always joke like we couldn't have done it without each other because we were both crazy enough to believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that it was just like we'd hit a problem and like even like the dual blade firing technologies, like I refused to believe that this isn't possible. And I'm like, I 100% believed them. And then we figured it out. And it was, there was just so many details.
Why would it not be? I mean, what's the main thing that's getting in the way of a dual firing technology?
So there's a lot in there. I won't elaborate on all, just in case somebody ever would, attempt to come after, try to knock us off per se, but it's all geometry based and everything is so specific. So the way that it works is I can just dive into the technology side of it. So go ahead. So on the blade, we have this radius portion. So that's actually that's our locking geometry. So what that does is whenever the blades are compressed, that will actually interlock with a dimple on the inside of the ferrule. So from the bottom up, we have the stud, removable stud. So the spring is entered from the underside of the ferrule. So when these are assembled, these are all the product is sourced worldwide. Like the blades come from Germany, the springs come from the UK. All the ferrules are finished up in Connecticut. Everything is shipped out to our facility in St. George, Utah, where it's all assembled, hand-tested, packaged right there. So the way the assembly works is obviously the tip on the ferrule, the blades are entered in. The spring comes in from the bottom side of the ferrule. Atop that spring is what's called a bullet blade lock. So what that is just imagine like a mushroom with a dimple in the top side of it. So this radius I was referring to on the blade interlocks with that dimple.
Exactly. I got one of those on an ice cream machine.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, kind of same.
Yeah, same thing.
So that's the way that when the blades are compressed, that locking geometry
sits into that dimple.
It can snap down in place. So when the spring is compressed, the blades are deployed, and that's also how whenever it contacts the animal, when the deployment tabs that are when it's in the closed position, those rotate out and overcome that locking geometry that then translate to the open position, allowing the spring to fire vertically at the blades at over 940 miles an hour in the open position. And that's also what allows for whenever the blades contact bone that they can compress that spring, not to the lock position, but they can bias downward until they penetrate beyond that bone, and then immediately fire back open.
out.
Right.
Exactly.
That's impressive. Yeah, and the way you articulate it too, it's like it makes perfect sense. I will tell you, I remember the very first time that I saw them, I was well, I can't recall my exact impression, but first of all, I was like, that's a sick looking broadhead. I think in my mind, for some reason, I felt like I had some doubt about any kind of spring loaded blade, because I was like, there's no way that it's going to have the tension to push back out.
That's a great thought, and that's also why I referenced that our vendor in the UK talked to us for a year and a half, telling us it was basically impossible. Like the mathematical, essentially specification of our spring, their software said that it was like not doable, that it could not be done. But then they stayed in it with us
because you guys were trying to achieve what I assume a certain poundage or weight that it was.
Exactly. So all of our testing, we're trying to achieve the spring force to keep them open, that is fully deployed through hide, tissue, tendons, but the only thing that can compress it down is bone. Exactly. So that's a very
and you know what that is. So there's a certain poundage required for all of those things you just mentioned.
Exactly. So there's like essentially I would refer to as like a sweet spot.
Is that proprietary? Can you say what those are?
So in the lock position, for example, our 2.3, it has over 22 pounds of force stored in the ferrule. So then whenever it's in the open position, that's the essentially force that the blades have to overcome on the spring to get it back to the lock position.
22 pounds.
Correct. Output onto the blades.
Wow. That seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot, which obviously
that doesn't mean like that doesn't apply that blade. Like if you set it in a way, it would prop up 22 pounds, or it would just about.
So in the closed position, so it's a little bit more technical than that. It's the force it would take to compress our spring to the length that keep the blades closed, that is housed in the ferrule with our stored energy in the ferrule.
Okay,
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I think the other thing that's like, I don't know how you account for is the sharpness acts as like a deduction from that, correct?
Yeah, it's those blades are, when we put Band-Aids in the packaging for a reason, because that was another non-negotiable with the project, is that we had to have the absolute sharpest mechanical broadhead blade on the planet. And we actually use Lutz blades over in Germany that they've been in the business for well over 100 years. It's a proprietary German stainless that is essentially alloyed, which essentially just means the recipe of the composition of the steel is optimized to edge retention, sharpenability, and durability. And we can get these blades to what's like a 60 HRC, so it's much harder than our competitors, and the way that we achieve that is actually goes through like
HRC would be hardness of the metal.
Correct. It's just a hardness scale that it's like a testing protocol that's kind of like worldwide recognized, that that way you can compare and contrast other products. So the 60 HRC, the blades, because they're so hard, a lot of times what you run into is brittleness. So a lot of other companies, the hardness is scaled back, so then they don't, especially because our blades can compress the spring to clear bone that normally bends or breaks a blade. So our technology with the cryogenic process, that after the blade is stamped into the profile non-sharpened, it goes into heat treat, and it goes from its heat treat temperature into a massive cooling process. And essentially what that is it realigns the molecules in the metal. A good analogy.
That's the hardening process?
That's their cryogenic freeze that goes onto the blades, or like ice hardening. They refer to it internally, but essentially what that is, if you think of it like grain in wood. So whenever this is stamped, like steel has a grain too. So this is essentially realigns, i.e. the grain of the blade, so that way it's the strongest potential orientation, which is why we can achieve that very high hardness, which results in the edge retentions, exponential. I mean, it honestly, what we also learned throughout the process was it almost exceeded what, we kind of foresaw, that we'd pick these things up and they were still razor sharp. And it's like, man, like we've never noticed that before. Wild. But it's because the blade can compress the spring. And it's not the bone isn't as detrimental to the edge.
Right.
Because like think of your pocket knife and you have to chop through a bone, like a rib bone.
Yeah.
Same concept that you do with a broadhead blade, that if they lock open, they can immediately be essentially dulled before they even get to the organ tissue.
But you're having that forgiveness, so it's not just that hard contact to it.
Exactly. So they can compress down, reserve the edge, and it stays razor sharp. So then when it fires back out, if you hit bone on the way in, you're cutting organ tissue with something that is exponentially sharper. And the way we found that was like the blood trails in that first Africa trip that was just absurd. And just like the hemorrhaging, and we're just like...
Were you on that trip?
I wasn't. Oh. I actually flew out to Josh's house, and I assembled 12 dozen broadheads. All the parts came. We had shot, I think, one animal. I'd shot a hog with one, and then I assembled 12 dozen. They got on a plane to Africa and took nothing else. Only beasts. Yeah. And just... They killed the number is like 40 some animals and like
there's a significant decrease in populations over there now. Yeah, that's wild, man. Well, but even just like, and obviously like a lot of what you're talking about is like, over the head, but the thought process of going into that, I think probably one of the first things that we talked about was not like the over complexity, but it would just seem like there's a lot more moving pieces with that broadhead versus like they just have to slip back, right?
Sure.
And so that initial thought process was like, is there more points of failure? Like what could happen with it? And I think that was the question for a lot of people when they initially saw it. But
or with any mechanical, frankly. I mean, that's like the go-to. It's like, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, any mechanical. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with the sever side, and a blade breaking off, and then that other blade tucking back in, and that's what the fixed blade guys talk about. It's like, hey, there's nothing that can go wrong with this thing, right? But I think,
in fairness, if you have an unmoving thing, technically, yes. I mean, there's not a mechanical failure that's going to happen, but from a design standpoint, like if there was a fixed blade, that was using a more brittle material, for instance, things can still break wrong with those, but
break off of the ferrule or wherever it might be, like that happens a lot.
Yeah,
I've done it on that deer.
Yeah.
But and that's a great point. Is if like from the outside looking in, more technology and something new, it's at first glance, that could be like an impression.
Sure.
But that was another thing that throughout that 3-year process, that's why everything inside the ferrule is all stainless steel. So that way, any of those aspects that could essentially compromise, because this thing can be locked and reopened thousands of times. I mean, I have one on my desk that during the process I would open and close it, and there's nothing you have to do differently, and it just essentially cams over, relocks into the blade lock, and it's ready to go again. So
dude, talk to me about this. Like, what is the difference, first of all, between steel and titanium? And is titanium better? And if so, I mean, because I know it's incorporated in this broadhead here.
Yep.
Which parts of it?
So in this particular one, and tomorrow, actually, I don't know when this is.
It'll already be out.
So it's tomorrow on June 20th, we're actually launching our 100 grain titanium. So it's going to be something that we're super excited. We've been working on that for well over a year.
And the 125 is already out. That's what I shot mine with.
Yep.
Why did you guys launch the 125 first?
So the 120, that's a long story, but
has to do with engineering, I assume.
The 100 grain was another one of those things. It's like, how in the world do we achieve this? Because so on the 125 here, what we have is it's a titanium ferrule and a steel tip. So in order to create this in a 100 grain option, you see a lot of options out there. That's a titanium 100 grain, but it's a one-piece machined ferrule tip as one. So this is a removable steel tip on a titanium ferrule, but a lot of 100 grain
blades are steel as well.
Yeah, blades are steel.
Okay. The German Let's steel, is that the same metal that's on the tip?
So it's a different metal. This is a 400 series stainless machined, and then this is a stamped, that's the German stainless. So all the blades across every Beast are exactly the same. The springs are all the same. The only thing that really differs is going to be the stud material, the ferrule material, and the tip material also is the same. Just wanted to make sure I clarify that.
Gotcha.
So 100 grain titanium ferrule, a lot of times what you see is they machine it as one piece for cost, because it's cheaper, and also then they don't have an additional step. But the problem with that is titanium for a ferrule material is fantastic. I mean, it's used in aerospace, all kind of applications. It's absolutely perfectly suited for a titanium, or for a ferrule, of course. But for a tip, you can only harden it to like a high 30s HRC, which like steel you can get around 60. So it's significantly softer in that lens. So making the ferrule and tip one part, whenever you hit bone, it can roll and bend much easier.
Right.
So
we've seen that, yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of the tips that you see that are titanium are more bulbous, which I referred to earlier, like larger diameter, a lot, less of they're a lot more shallow angle. So they're almost, would resemble a little bit more blunt. Yep. So then that way they don't roll as...
Makes sense.
So then what we incorporate is actually a steel tip with the titanium ferrules. That way we're able to innovate around that and solve it. So we have that super high hardness tip on the titanium ferrule chassis essentially, and it's something we're super excited about. But answer your question there, so steel and titanium, they are, essentially which one is better is, it's not really a question. It's more of an application question of what you're doing, especially with weight. Like our 150 grain is a stainless steel ferrule, 125 being titanium, and we do have some 125s in our aluminum ferrule option as well. It's honestly something that we get a ton of emails that people wanting different configurations and options, and, titanium by nature is it's the strength is something that a lot of people want for, certain elk hunts, Cape Buffalo. I mean, but Josh killed 8 Cape Buffalo with our original Beast. So it's kind of comes down to almost a little bit more of like preference and, people wanting certain componentry, just like on, with weights, even like insert outserts. Yep. People have different options.
Honestly, marketing for the most part. Like when I see titanium, I'm like, that sounds cool.
I mean, titanium's an incredible material. Yeah. I mean, it's perfectly suited for archery applications. So it was just one of those things that we're building out a comprehensive category and having all of those options to meet every customer's request and application. We wanted to certainly do so.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, dude, I know that my concerns of like I said, originally when I saw the spring design, I was like, boy, there's no way that's like it. I'm just, that was my concern. I was like, boy, it's like, it seems like it would have to be a crazy spring, to be able to give it that weight.
Oh, it's a crazy spring for sure. I mean, our vendor told us that it's the most advanced spring that they've ever produced, and they make springs for aerospace.
So what kind of technology goes into springs like that? I mean, most people see a coil that goes like,
I don't know. I hope people aren't like, haven't shut us off from all the engineering nerding
out
here.
No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Are you good? I'm keeping with them here.
So the spring actually, and again, this is something that we didn't really enter into this, Josh and I, of this process, knowing a lot of these processes. It was just something that over the course of 3.5 years, you can have a lot of conversations. In case you're wondering, I mean, we've talked for we spent I don't know how many thousands.
You got well acquainted with the voice message.
Oh man, yeah,
that's an exclusive Bowhunter thing.
I think I talked to Josh more than I talked to Kelly.
The work wife.
Yeah, she jokes about it, but the spring actually goes through like an 8-step process from the time that they essentially source the material. I mean, it starts out as a really large diameter piece of metal that is essentially necked down.
Yeah, I've seen that video. I mean, from somewhere else of how they make them. It's like spiral pieces.
So then,
coming from the UK, you said, right?
Yeah, they're coming out of the UK, and they make springs for like Aston Martin, Lamborghini, Ferrari, like aftermarket. So it's in the automotive industry. So the reason that we kind of landed there was we were like, we have to find the most advanced spring vendor in the world. If it's in the US, great. If it's in Europe, whoever that is, we need to find it. So I found this company in the UK just on a cold call from a Google search, and this guy over there worked his butt off for us for like a year and a half, just continuing to answer my email. And I got to give lots of credit too. I mean, we said we're going to be the largest broadhead company in the world, but we're going to make you work your face off for 2 years before we put in a single PO. We didn't know that at the time, but that was what happened.
Yeah.
We told it, but how many emails a day do they get? Hey, we're going to be the largest company in the world. Okay, buddy. You know what I mean? Like everybody says it.
Probably not that many, actually.
Well, in the broadhead space for sure, but it's just something that, so hats off to our vendors there. But as for like the spring vendor, I found them on like a Google search, called them up, and I was like, hey, I see some of the technology you make, got a non-disclosure in place, and just started off to the races. And I was explaining kind of what we needed to accomplish. And like I said, it was like a year and a half before we ever got a sample. And they're like, we can't do it. I'm like, are you sure? Like, and I just kept on them. Then like, we can do it this way. Well, then every time the spring specification changes, then everything else changes. Right. So that was like, it was just constantly chasing our tail.
What were the main limiting factors on the spring? Or, okay, we can't make it that strong, or it's too heavy, it's too big.
The biggest limiting factor I would attribute to the fact that 100 grain is probably 80+% of the market. So we have 100 grains that we have to
light.
Can fit all everything. Of this in. Yeah. It has to weigh under 100 grains.
100 grains is like nothing.
It's not. It is literally. Trust me, it is literally nothing. So
you throw 3 like veins on your weight. It's like there's 15 grains right there.
So it's the limiting factors were essentially archery standards. 100. The broadhead has to weigh 100 grains for one. So the spring can't weigh more than 7 or 8 grains. At the absolute.
Wow.
Like that's essentially
7 or 8 grains is what it weighs.
So the spring is right around 8 grains.
Wow.
So but like we'd have to sacrifice.
That's nuts.
Like 8 to 10% of our viable weight in order for this component. And then every percent beyond that, and then everything downstream changes. So we'd go back, and then also the diameter, like AMO, like the end of your insert, it's like that's the AMO standard. The end of your outsert is like 320 thousandths. That's like kind of like 312 to 320. I don't know the exact specification, but if you measure various broadheads inserts, that's pretty 312 is like AMO standard, and that's 0.312 inches for anybody that I'm speaking in thousandths there. But then the diameter of the ferrule has to match that 0.312 or 0.32 inches. So the spring can't be too big, because then you have to fit it in the ferrule, and you have to have sidewall around it for contact with objects like shoulders and things like that. So the diameter, the length also was a massive aspect there, because also I couldn't have this ferrule be 3 inches long,
right?
Because then also wouldn't weigh 100 grains either. So it was just this delicate dance of like, how do we fit it, but we need this much force. We're like, you have to do all these things. Like, well, that's not an option, so we have to try again. So it was just,
I'd love to see all the drawings of that. I'm imagining you guys have an idea of a spring going down into the shaft at some point. That had to have happened.
Dude, there's so many ideas that we could talk for days about what's in the pipeline and where our brains went kind of down this path. But the other thing that kind of comes into factor is, which this is a question we get often, is like, well, what if I leave that locked?
Yeah.
Do I have to store these open? And the answer is absolutely no, you do not. You can leave them in the closed position for years and years and years and have absolutely
thinking it'll have some spring effect or something if they keep it closed.
Exactly, because this isn't like a spring from the hardware store, right? Because that was another thing we presented to our vendor. I'm like, so these arrive, they have to ship to us, we have to assemble them, we have to hand test them, then they go to our distributed facility, then they go to every bow shop and consumer in the world who purchases them, and then they might buy them in January. Well, then hunting season's in the fall. I'm like, these things have to be able to stay locked for years and years and years with no aspect to the design. And they have a test where they can run like multi-year testing on internally, and then we did some testing as well too. You can leave this broadhead locked for years and years and years, and it'll have absolutely no effect on functionality. Because that was the other side of the geometric layup of the spring, like how many coils there are, and all of those factors that affect that specific parameter, all of that. Because then that was the other thing. I'm like, oh, also all those other things we asked for, you also have to leave it in the locked compressed position for 5, 6, 7 years, and nothing happened. And they're just looking at us like, are you guys nuts? I'm like, yeah, we might be a little bit nuts, but
maybe.
But that's where the automotive side comes into play. I mentioned about is because like people aren't driving their Lambo to take the kids to school.
Sitting in the garage.
It's going to sit there for.
What kind of automotive like application did those springs have?
So it's an engine componentry.
Okay.
And so I'm not like a gearhead, so I don't know exactly.
There's something in the engine.
In the engine, yeah. They do a lot of like valves and other things. So I don't want to like elaborate on me saying exactly what they were used, but they told that's where in supercars essentially is one of their specialties, is ensuring that those spring, because like I said, that car might sit there for 2-3 years, and then whomever owns it doesn't drive it, but they
gotta rip.
Exactly, and everything has to stay sound. So that's how we ended up there. But the springs go through like an 8-step process from the time they're coiled. I mean, it even involves like a bead blasting for like increasing the rate of the spring. Like the spring rate is just essentially the force that it outputs. Like the rate, that number plus how much you compress it is how much output you have. So those it was a marathon.
I mean, so how much this is just Jared and I aren't engineers, right? So like as you're looking at this from an engineer standpoint, and you're getting a component like the spring, and then you're getting blade, like you said, you're going to change one thing and it changes everything down the stream. I mean, how many is it physically, like you're getting those to assemble it to do a prototype to test it, or is it like a computerized model that you're testing that's like, hey, it passes, it fails? Like
No, man, that was all trial and error.
It was trial and error.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, there's like a limit of like, okay, we know that this spring, for example, is going to give us 20% more output, but what downstream consequence could that potentially have? So then every time we get a different spring, well, then if the length's different, then we have to get a different stud, or the ferrule has to change to fit it to even try it. So then when you get the first sample, like I'd get some, put them together, next day air Josh out a bunch, and we're both like putting them together, trying to figure it out, and then, okay, nothing worked. Well, what worked last time that we now screwed up, and what could have gotten better? So you're constantly just like chipping away at a boulder, essentially, and ruling out one. You learn one thing, and then essentially failing upward to where it's like, okay, we learned this, now we change the geometry. Like even those blades, like I would get 10 or 15 sets cut at a time, changing the geometry 5% in a direction. Then I'd find out, I'd exhaust that and be like, well, that was a ginormous waste of time.
Wow. Well, if anybody listening to this is thinking about it, they at least now are like, holy shit, this thing is engineered.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Josh and I, we were in the gauntlet for literally over 3 years of just with the mission of we're going to build the best broadhead in the world, and we're not going to launch it until we truly fully feel like we have accomplished that goal. And I can sit here with 100% certainty today and say that, I feel like we have. I mean, we didn't leave a single thing on the table. We're still trying to find, ways to improve and optimize for as we progress. Like even the titanium that launches tomorrow, the blade actually has a new sharpening process. So they actually like the angle plus like a different wheel that we used that was like experimental for our vendor over there, actually made them even sharper than they were before. So it's just all of those things just continuously pushing the envelope. And but at the same time, like I said, that's just what, we're trying to build the largest archery company in the world. And it's just like, those are the things that it takes to just, asking better questions to get better answers, and because we're, for me being from the target side where I shot archery to essentially pay my mortgage for a long time, like those intricate aspects of, accuracy and that side of it, plus engineering where, Josh and Sarah have killed, I don't know how many dozens of species all over the world, to see all of those scenarios. And then, plus like their business background, and all their other incredibly successful businesses brought into here. It just like was like the perfect storm. It was like the universe like brought us together, and it was like, we have to crush, like, not that we have to crush it. It was just more of a like, we can't give up, because it's like, it's on the other side of that. And it, looking back, I wonder, it's kind of crazy that it all, it could have been a massive, I mean, we wouldn't have let it, but it could have been a massive, failure, but it was just gotta stay in the fight.
Yeah, well, I think it's such a cool spot, even just as a company, for where you guys are at. Cause a couple points. Number one, I think, just where you guys have positioned yourself now, I think people expect when Beast or Bowmar puts out a new product that it's premium, right? Like that you're not just putting out a cheapo product to people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of the brand thought around it.
And that's more of an underlying mission of like, we just wanted to make bow hunting better because we love it, and it's like, how can we improve this, that, the space that we love? And it was just like, and not as a negative to anybody out there, but it was just like, we felt like that there was some room for innovation. Dude, maybe seeing it in a different way.
Some room is a understatement of the century. Like we talk about it all the time, and I don't mean to like bash on them, but it's just like, if you think about even the last like 5 years, it's like what truly innovative has come into this industry, and it's like there isn't much.
Yeah, I mean it's just and that's that's a great way to put it. And it's just more of a, you see other things happening in the world. It's like, I feel like,
we're advancing so fast in the world. I mean, look at AI and what it is. And even in the last 2 years, and then I look at the archery industry and I'm like, even when a new cell camera comes out, I'm like, okay, like what's going to have satellite, nothing. It has everything. It's not that much better of a camera.
It's probably a tough spot, like in the outdoor industry, especially because, and I would put myself in this category, we're probably like cautiously open to innovation, like
because you're fearful of it?
No, in the sense that it's like, hey, like, could killing these things get any easier? Like type of a mindset.
I think it's purely money driven in the industry. It's like if I could innovate.
I mean, from a consumer acceptance.
Yeah.
Is what I mean.
Well, I'm thinking from a manufacturing side. It's like I could innovate, but it's going to cost me more money. Therefore, I'd rather just put out the next product. And
definitely that is happening.
Not you guys, but I'm just saying like that's the mindset. I mean,
that's what's happened. Yeah.
That's what capital groups have done.
And
that
could have been a prime example of like that first iteration that we had. That Josh is like, this could be better. Like we could have launched that. We could have, made a lot of money.
Yep. And then moved to V2 at some point.
But then that's the only person that's at the expense of our customer. And like our customer is the lifeblood of our business. So like our primary goal is to serve our customer and overwhelm their expectations. And because like I remember being a consumer. Josh remembers being a consumer. It's like you spend your hard-earned money on something that we put out there, and it's like we want it to be the best it possibly can be because like we refuse to put out a product that we don't feel like has met that goal. Because like somebody goes and works their butt off all day and then they come and buy a pack of Beast Broadheads. Like we want it to be absolutely exceptional experience for them, and it's not like wow, like that's just there was room to make it better.
It's almost weird when that happens anymore, isn't it? Like
shocking.
There's not that many things that when you buy them now you're like, oh my gosh, like this thing is epic. Like 9 times out of 10, especially in the hunting. I mean, you're talking about all your big box stuff. You pick it up and you're like, this is just crap.
Yeah, most things are let down.
It's all junk.
That's a primary. I mean, I feel like I can speak for all of us that like that. That's a mission that we're going to stick to as long as we're in this game. It's going to be for a long time, is put out product that makes archery better and give somebody the absolute best version of what we possibly could achieve and not settling for anything other than our level of perfection.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there has been, toot our own horn for some of our sponsors, but like I pick up a new Hoyt bow and I'm like, damn, like this thing feels good.
Man, when I was shooting for them, I mean, I still know a lot of the engineers. Dude, those guys are squared away. I mean, I shoot Hoyt now just because I'm not sponsored by them or anything anymore. I buy bows, but it's because I buy them because I like them. And it's like it's a really cool side of that now that I can do that. Like before, I was doing it I was shooting stuff I believed in, but I was sponsored. But now I had the freedom to try some things, and it's like I picked up a Hoyt again. I'm like, man, it just feels right. It's a great bow.
When we were shooting tack, like a lot of you guys, as we are now too, are using like the Bushnell broadhead rangefinder.
Yeah, Josh Jones got us. Josh Jones got Josh Bomar onto that, and we were all out there. So, and he said it was awesome. I'd never heard of it.
They're dirt cheap, like compared to what's out there. And it's like I saw Bomar using it. I'm like, this dude could buy any rangefinder. Like I expect him to have the best rangefinder, just like this, because he wants the best. Period. But then when we talk to those guys, they're like, oh, Tim Gillingham really was like the brain in this. And if you know Tim and his background, it makes sense then. Yeah. Like you're like, oh, this is a good product.
And shout out to him. He taught me a ton in the target archery world. I used to shoot for gold tip back in the day. And actually he taught me how to level third axis. So when I get you boys all
those third axis
leveled up,
I should have brought one of my new arrows to show you. I didn't
show and tell, man. What's up?
Mine's apparently leaning to the left a little. I don't know.
Oh no. Yours is going to be a good shape. I'm going to have to take my bow back in to get it a little bit retuned. I think I texted you the other day when I said it's So I went from I should have brought them here, but I did Easton Parallel Pro, and it was the 250 spine, and I had the Easton components on the end of it, and they were whatever. They have like a half out outsert. I think it was
70
something grain, 75 grain, something like that. 125 grain head. So it was like a direct transition to now. Per you guys the other day, and I was looking anyways. I was like, I'm not sure about these 4mm. That was in the back of my head. And so I picked up some of those HLRs, the Victory HLRs, and I got the 250 spine also, and I got the 75 grain outsert, which I think is like the green.
Is that a 5mm now?
It's 5mm.
It is.
Yep. And I've got the 125 grain head still. So in that transition, I guess because it is, I get away with a little bit less shaft because it's a longer component, and it may be a slightly lighter grain per inch arrow as well. So I went from like 510, I think I was at like 509, 510 total arrow weight, to like 495. And it's shooting sweet. I'm obviously like at 60 yards. I've got like about 6 inches of difference.
Makes sense. Plus then like the 4mm, 5mm will sit different on your arrow rest.
Oh.
So then that way
maybe that's why you're kicking. right?
IMK. So that's where I'm at now. That's where I'm going to.
So 4 millimeter on a rest, when you increase the diameter like a 5 millimeter, essentially your point is going to go towards your top
Makes
limb
sense.
because larger diameter, so it sits higher because nothing else changed other than the diameter of the arrow.
Yeah.
So that that could be change your tune, vein contact on the way out. So definitely need to get a tune up.
A little change like that.
You got a little fishtail.
Not that it's a little change.
You got time. It's only June, but you're ahead of the game.
I'll be in on Monday to get that straightened away, but I am excited about that change. So
yeah. Well, while we're on it, we can make this a little small. Explain to us the third axis thing, because we don't know anything about any of that.
Yeah, that's interesting because especially like being at TAC, I was like, it's underserved. I feel like in the hunting industry, especially like TAC being so exciting. So essentially the best way to explain it, and I can elaborate, is that shooting on flat ground, at essentially a 0 degree slope, you're in your backyard, it's perfectly flat, shooting at a target, and you shooting at 50 yards.
Would it help? I have some sights in the back if you want to. Does that help at all or no?
Yeah, I could. That would probably help. I could kind of use a little bit of
There's some tetras in the back.
Little analogy with holding it for anybody watching on video.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Beast Broadheads.
Dude, Beast Broadheads. Man, we've been advocating for and shooting expandable, especially big expandable broadheads for years and years now. And it just seems like they just keep making them better and better. And ultimately, with the relationship we've forged with the Bowmarks this past year, we're just super excited to be shooting the Beast Broadheads this year.
I mean, this broadhead it's the world's sharpest expandable broadhead out there. It has best penetration, and it's got bone avoiding technology. Ultimately, we want to create the most trauma possible on a deer when we release an arrow. The Beast Broadhead does that for us every time.
So right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for a discount on anything on the Beast website. So definitely go check out beastbroadheads.com.
So essentially, this will be good for frame of reference.
Yep.
So just before I explain, so third axis is essentially the scope in relation to what would be, we'll say, the sight bar. So the third axis is this direction.
This way.
So essentially, anybody not watching video, if you're holding your bow, the scope angling towards you, towards your eye, and away from your eye on that pivot axis. So this direction.
Gotcha.
Here.
Whereas most people are thinking like it should be like flat, level, right? Like I wouldn't expect it to be towards me or away from me.
So if you're like,
it would be just straight, like with the riser to whatever it's screwed to, right? If there is no,
it would be
axis.
Perpendicular to the riser, right?
Right. Yes.
So
the axis would be.
Yeah, the face of your scope would be perfectly parallel to the front of your riser.
Gotcha.
In that analogy.
Yep.
So essentially, if you're shooting on flat ground, back to that 0 degree slope, shooting at 50 yards, shooting some arrows. Then you take your target and you put it at a 25 or 30 degree slope downhill. You're on a mountain hunt. You're shooting out of a tree stand way down into the bottom, a creek bottom. There's a big buck down there. And then you shoot that exact same distance, and then you hit 8 inches to the right. But your level was perfect in this scenario, shooting at 0 degrees. Your bubble in your housing is exactly where it should be. But then you drop to a significant slope downhill or uphill, and your bubble's good. You line everything up, perfect in your peep, fire a good arrow, and you hit it 8 inches to the left or right. And it's like,
does that happen a lot?
All the time.
It was happening. That's what this came up is I was consistently like, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches left on several of those like 80 and 100 yard targets. And that's why they're like, oh, you got to adjust your third axis. I'm like, right.
So that is, and a lot of times, anybody that doesn't know what happened, that's a massive problem, right? Because on a deer of a lifetime, a mountain hunt, you're on an elk hunt, whatever.
Especially anybody hunting from a tree stand. I mean, that's where it's happening is where angles are introduced.
Any elevation angle, especially 20 yards.
Not
how
so much.
Detrimental. But essentially, what causes that is if you can imagine. I mean, you guys roll me in here if this analogy isn't going to be ideal for users. So say you take like a 6 foot carpentry level,
and
you hold it perfectly parallel to your body, to your chest. And then you hold it level, and then you drop it straight down. What's the bubble going to do?
It's going to move.
No, you're correct. It's going to stay because it's perfectly parallel to your chest.
Oh, I got
What if you take the left side of that 6 foot level and bend your left arm and pull it closer to your left shoulder, and then take your right arm and straighten it and you hold it level, and then you bend it at the waist?
Yeah, it's going to go up.
The bubble's going to bury on the uphill side.
Yep.
That's third axis in a nutshell. Because if you have the level and you hold it parallel to your chest and bend it the waist,
it's not moving.
It doesn't move.
Because it stays But when you go...
And you hold it at an angle, if you hold it at 0 degrees straight out in front of your face, the bubble's perfect.
Yep.
And then bend your waist and point
down,
your toes, it buries to the side.
It's going to...
Interesting.
That's third axis. And... and I hope that was an analogy that was...
that makes sense.
So
I guess the question is, like... How do I know how much to adjust it?
So that's a great question. So and
I'm glad you asked.
We have a bubble in the scope, just like on that level analogy. So the way that you have to do this is it must be done at full draw. So the reason it has to be done at full draw, it's trust me, you guys. So because it has to be done at full draw, when your bow's at static, and you would have to set your own. You have to set your own. I have to set my own. We can't set each other's.
Okay.
It's all about how you grip the bow. And everything. But the reason it has to be done at full draw is when you draw the bowstring back, the cams wrap, limbs compress, all that load is then held in your cables.
Mm-hmm.
The cables are obviously pulled to your cable guard or cable slide away from center shot, so you have clearance. So now all that loads in those cables, that induces torque into the riser.
Right.
So the reason it has to be done at full draw is because that has to be with that cable guard load in relation to the riser, in relation to your hand.
Gotcha. Versus at static, basically.
Because that torque would change the angle. And it also has to be done at bent at like 45 degrees downhill with your stabilizer, a sidebar. Like if you shoot a sidebar, like I shoot like a 15-inch bow archery front bar, 10-inch sidebar with like 8 or 10 ounces on it.
Yep.
So swinging that downhill, a gravity effects on that sidebar with where that weight is, plus the cable guard load, plus your hand position. So all of those factors have to be tied in to where you can effectively set your third axis.
So it will differ per shot, essentially, right?
So it will differ per setup. So
per setting, I guess, is the better.
Put a sidebar on, take a sidebar off, or different. Once you get set it, you're pretty much good to go for the duration that you're going to have that bow. But it's definitely an underserved part of the industry for sure. That kind of the technical side.
Well, I guess I was thinking like if I'm in a tree stand and I'm shooting at this deer 40 yards down this way versus this deer 50 yards down that way, it would be a different setting.
No, that'd be the same setting as long as the bow and you were consistent.
Let me ask this question. It'll answer yours, I think. So you gave us the analogy of the level. Yeah. So I'm trying to translate that to, now a sight. So in the level example, we're moving our arms like this.
Yeah. So in the sight example, because the torque,
and the riser,
it would change it this direction. So it'd change it this way. Here,
gotcha.
Just hold this out like that, and then maybe you can choose better words if
no, you're right. Yeah, I mean that torque is either gonna.
So what you're saying is, so let's just say it's like this. It's off a little bit or whatever. So at full draw, the act of moving it straight like this would be the comparable of moving it from this to this.
Yeah,
so that now when we go up and down, it's the same.
Bingo.
Gotcha.
Because you're doing that at full draw. That now we have position of the riser. We'll just call that position 1, and then the level is position 2. So we need to loosen the third axis screw, and then we change the orientation of the scope housing. So then that way it is in the optimum position.
That scope or that third angle adjustment then doesn't need to be done at a downward angle, right? It's going to be the same regardless of angle.
The third has to be done at a downward angle from my analogy of like stabilization setups as well as the angle. So if you just hold this out in front of you and you do that analogy where if I have it straight up and down and I dip it, the bubble doesn't move.
Right.
So then if I torque it this way, like right there, the bubble's perfect. But then I drop it, it buries to the other side of the housing. So the reason it has to be done at an angle is because it could be off at 0 degrees. You'd have no idea because, right there, it would look right.
Yeah.
But then that angle is when you can get
so you're
feedback.
saying like when you're down at that angle, if you then adjust that third axis, essentially then you're...
Then when you bring it back, you're golden.
But the problem is like people see this, the bubble's buried. They're like, oh no, I'm off, and they cant their bow.
Which is what I did.
Because look here, the bubble's still level here.
Yeah.
It's only not level when you go here.
Yeah.
So in theory, if you adjust it at the bottom, it should be the same on an up angle as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, would it?
That's super interesting.
If I did the adjustment and I go back to flat ground and I'm shooting my yard, does it look like my housing is?
Nope.
No.
It's exactly as it should.
There's been times that I felt like I looked at it and I'm like, that looks like a weird angle that it's at. And I assume,
I
assume Tim is doing. I don't know,
because I assume you pay attention to your bubble when you're attack.
Yep.
Same thing. So like I remember when you guys were talking about that, like we would get into some of those steep angle long shots, and I'm like, damn, like I really feel like that. Why am I feeling like I have to really torque so far to the left? Like that doesn't feel natural to my normal movement.
And you already feel convoluted. You're uncomfortable distance. You're shooting there, and you're like, well, I'm trying to
like it's really like I'm really having to torque over to the left to get that bubble back to level.
You're trying to be as accurate as possible. So it's like now I'm going to correct, and then but you don't realize that until there's a scenario. But then it's like, well, I was already uncomfortable shooting that shot. Maybe it was me.
Yeah.
But then I feel like so many people don't realize that it's an incredibly critical part of long range accuracy, especially like, Midwestern guy. I mean, guys that hunt out west, they're probably, I'm not trying to speak for them, but I would imagine they may be a little bit more used to that because like in Western PA or in PA or like the Midwest,
not a
like,
big deal.
You don't ever have a scenario that could be in play. But if you're shooting out, you live out in Utah.
Well, dude, you'll see when we go shoot. Are you going to be at that? You're going to be at that TAC too, right? In Utah?
Yeah, man.
We'll be there.
Yeah, so that
our third angles will be on point.
If you guys start laying down some,
you won't be there
12s.
till after us though, right? We'll be there Thursday.
I think I feel like we were booking flights. I think we'll be there Wednesday. I don't know. I'll text you. I'll have to look.
Well, we'll be there.
But yeah, so that's third axis in a nutshell. I hope that's not like too technical, but it's very important, and it's something that I feel like is underserved and maximizing your ability to hit the middle.
I'm trying to think how to say this. I assume then, like for let's say the average whitetail guy who shoots 40 and in from a tree stand, like he might as well do it, right? Like it's not going to hurt.
It can't hurt anything. It can only improve.
So I guess I'm just getting at.
Yeah, and it's just something that, especially like elevated position, or like I'm sure we all have a set where you're shooting way down into a creek bottom. I mean, you can even get some pretty significant terrain, some very steep downhills, and it's just something that it's an edge that the animal deserves just as much as we deserve as archers have the accuracy. So it's something that is just not quite covered, I think, in the detail, because it is kind of a hard concept to understand. It took me a while. Like I said, Gillingham
that helped a lot.
Taught me how to, and that was just something that the best analogy, because I was they're like, why do you have to do it full draw? And it was just like that pushback, and over the years of, because like in target archery everybody does it because it's just we're trying to win money at the end of the day. That's like how we're paying our bills at that time. So it was like, well, obviously you have to do that, but then I think it's also opposite. So if you hit left downhill, you'll hit right uphill. So it's inverse if it's off in one direction.
How do you know when it's correct?
When it's correct, that when you set it at that when you at full draw, essentially aiming at the ground, then seeing it, the bubble
will come back.
It's perfect. So what it is I can elaborate more. And again, just reel me in here. So the way that I set it is it's with a.
There's nowhere to reel, dude. This is what we're doing.
So it's with it's called a Hamschke Easy Third Axis. This is the way I learned how to set it.
Okay, it's a tool.
It's a tool. It essentially mounts onto your sight bar, and then it has a vertical pin. Okay, so you clamp it on your sight bar. You set your first and second axis first. Then once you're ready to set your third axis.
We should have covered the first two axes first.
Are they set already?
Okay, I'm generally with you. There's two axes before you get to this one.
Yeah, so.
But so the first and second, most guys are familiar with adjusting and
just
setting
for fun.
those.
What are the first two axes?
So the second axis, a lot of sites may not even have a second axis adjustment. But what the second axis is your sight bar.
There is a set screw on that, by the way.
Oh, there is? That's what it was?
Yeah.
I kind of had it in here enough to where essentially your second axis is ensuring that your sight bar.
Yep.
And we have a clamp on here. We have this level, let's pretend.
Yep.
This sight bar's level needs to be level with your housing.
Okay.
Because if it's not, as you run your sight down your sight bar, you're going to start to hit left.
Yeah.
Or right.
Yep.
So that's your second axis. Your first axis is your sight bar in relation to your riser.
Mm-hmm.
Best way to put that. So they're not overly complex. A lot of those are
just making sure everything's square.
Yeah, so that's the best way to put it. That your sight bar and your scope are square. Everything's good there. So
I assume most guys are not doing that. They're hoping that their bow shop is doing it, or whoever.
And
set
honestly,
up their
a
bow.
lot of those they're going to come from factory.
Factory set.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Theoretically, your first axis, if you're your holes are tapped weird in your riser.
Right. Third axis is the only one that's majorly impacted by torque. That's why it's necessary.
Third axis is the one that everybody pretty much definitely needs to check. I would say that that's the most important of all of them. So the way you check it is it's a rectangular tool that clamps onto your sight bar. And there's a level in it. So my index finger right here is another level, let's pretend. So then we need to, that level being level with our scope housing, that's our second axis, remember?
Yep.
So now that we have that tool on there, the bubble in here doesn't matter, and we have a perpendicular pin. So essentially that pin gives us an extension of our sight bar. So we have my finger's now a vertical pin. Okay. So when you draw back, because we know that this is perpendicular to the ground, we line that pin up with a vertical line at that downward slope. So we're angled at the waist. Now we have the pin that is the bracket on the bracket.
I've seen people doing this. Yeah.
You line that up on the string, and then when you do that and the pin's good, we make sure our bubble's correct.
Yeah.
You move your housing towards your eye and away from your eye with that pin on the vertical line until that bubble is perfect.
Comes back to perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys are going to force me to make a video on this now because after tack, I feel like
you can use these clips. It'll work perfect.
Yeah, man, we'll do a little collab there. But I'm like, after tack, I was like, it amazed me how many people like probably there like have no idea, and like they just are so excited to be there.
It's like one of those things people are like, oh yeah, 401k or whatever. They're just like generally understood, but it's like years go on and you never ask the question. It's
so it's just something that I feel like that, especially like now how popular it is, and like people are shooting angles that they've never shot before, and it's like, well, we got to translate that to, we're like Beast and Bowhunter Archery, we're here to make archery better and archers better. So anything we can do that, and even like from this knowledge side and like seeing that, like I see a gap of like, I want to elaborate on that a little bit. And like now we'll definitely have to put out a video of kind of explaining that to where it's like, hey, this is, because it's so simple, and once you do it, you're good to go.
It sounds like you do need some help to get it done. Like it's a two-man.
It's a two-person. I mean, I can do it by myself, but you kind of really got to have.
How do you do it by yourself?
I mean,
you draw back and let down.
Okay. Yeah, and then trust you let down to move the scope.
Right.
We're not gonna derail.
Let me hold this with my foot, and then I'll hold this with my teeth.
We're gonna skip that part. So it's that's third axis in a nutshell right there.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense from the, and it again, it's just because like we're not doing long range.
I'm gonna venture to say mine's never been adjusted. I think Tim
mine
probably gives that to us, in that square with the risers. As close as you could know without.
Yeah, axis 1 and 2 are probably in check, and then that's it.
And I'm sure there's a lot of shop. There's some incredible bow shops in the country. I'm sure that a lot of them have maybe just a 3-point check per se, that they're able to get that to where like a frame of reference that they know is and kind of standard, but you can exceed the standard with checking it for your.
I'm gonna ask Tim on Monday. Can we do this?
Because if you torque your bow, like hypothetically, like I'm not saying you do, but if you had like
everybody does a little bit, right?
Like an improper, we'll say out of the norm grip. If your form is not the status quo, which there's no perfect form, I'll start with that everybody, repeatability is all that matters. I saw some of the best archers in the world when I was competing with them. I'm like, everybody does it different. So as long as you can do it the same every time, just keep on doing that. But, you have a slightly different grip that would cause increased torque induced downhill, you'd have really no idea. And another big thing that came up was even like, that Josh knows, that he and I were chatting about, like at his house, like when I've shot with him out there, his place in Iowa, like all of his targets are pretty much flat. So like he sets his like stabilization and all of maximizing his setup at that position. But then he was shooting those angles, and he's like, wow, I learned so much about my setup from shooting in these uncomfortable situations that then you can apply and kind of build on your setup optimization for all those, because hunting, heck, you never know what the heck's gonna happen. So.
Yeah, well, dude, you're gonna really enjoy that snowbird shoot, because there's some serious uphill, like
that's cool,
90 yards up to. If you miss, it's like a rock pile, just rock. So
that's cool. That helps a lot, David, like a ton. Just understanding that, and really just I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this, if they've shot tack or whatever, is like especially if you're paying attention to the bubble, because like most of us get in this where we just want to repeat our motions and do our shot. But like I said, I immediately knew on some of those, I'm like, man, I'm having to torque this thing way too much just to get that bubble back to level. Like I wasn't in my shot form anymore. I'm just doing whatever I needed to do to get that bubble back to.
And what's the first principle we all learned when we start shooting is like you gotta like draw back and make sure that bubble's right, or you're gonna hit left. So it's like everybody is so like ingrained to make sure that that's correct, and you're already uncomfortable. It's like, okay, how do I maximize the ability to hit in the middle? It's like, oh my gosh, my bubble's off, and then you hit 8 inches right, and it's like, man, I made a bad shot, but you may not have. It may have been setup related. That I mean, we all love it when it's the setup, right? It's never us. It's
never the shooter.
Like, thank you. This is actually not my fault that I missed.
Well, I'm going to use you while you're here. I hope it's okay. Here's another one for you. I a couple of years ago, probably 2020, 2019, when we started mule deer hunting, I made a decision that I wanted to start hunting with my quiver on. Just because, and I was going to practice with that just because, like, especially in a mule deer spot and stock situation, like you don't take them off, and chances are you need to reload. And so I was like, I'm just going to shoot with my quiver on, like from here on out. And I've got really comfortable with that. So I'm shooting at, the RX-9 right now, and I've got a 10-inch front stabilizer on the lower, stab input. There's 2 of them. And then I've got the SL sidebar mount on the side with like I think an 8-inch stabilizer and more weight coming off of it. And frankly, it does help to offset the weight. When I first put it on there, I didn't know anything about sidebar mounts or what. I was just like, I need something to offset the weight on the side.
Absolutely.
And at some point, it became also like a tripod for me. I was like, it also happens to work. I can set it like
purpose,
this.
Let's get it.
So I assume there's other guys doing that, or at least the first part they're wanting to shoot with a quiver on. Do you see any issues like with what I'm doing there? I can go ahead.
I definitely don't see any issue. A prime reason that I don't is especially like it's more surface area to catch wind
for sure.
So if you're shooting in like in a lot of that spot and stock, you're in open country. But at the same time, you leaving your quiver 80 yards back doesn't help either. So it's definitely something that quiver on, that if you practice with it and you're religious about it all season and you optimize your setup for it to be on there, the only downside is going to be that this essentially surface area in the wind.
So are you carrying a quiver like on a waist belt or something?
Oh yeah, I'm like a spot and stock quiver off guy. Like I'll hold it, move it, whatever I got to do. I don't shoot with my quiver on unless it's like the absolute last resort. Just because I have, my setup curated to practice without it. So it's like, it's just kind of part of, and I haven't done a lot of spot and stock recently, but it's something that, like tree stand, right? You take it off, hang it, throw it in your backpack, no big deal. But that spot and stock, I've also heard horror stories of people that like leave their quiver and they're like, need another arrow and their quiver's 100 yards behind them. So,
well, honestly, and dude, I'm not even going mule deer hunting this year. Maybe it's kind of stupid that I've like dedicated my whole season to.
Do you take it off in the tree stand?
No.
Yeah, I used to. That would be the first thing I did was take the quiver off and put it in the crutch of the tree or whatever it was, and hang it up.
Yeah.
Now I think I leave it on mostly.
Yeah, and I practice with 3 arrows in it.
Yeah,
I want it to be like
just kind of, if you practice how you play, I see no issue with that. Especially, it's more of a comfort in whatever repeatability. If you can repeat it, the only downside is if it's windy. But let's be real, if it's windy, it's really hard to hit where you want anyway. It's just
if you're hunting the Midwest, it's gonna be windy.
But it's a game of like percentages, right? If it's like what's 5% easier is the wrong term, but 5% less surface area without that quiver on just catches too much wind.
You're right, man. This conversation alone has me think, especially without this mule deer hunt this year. I'm like, why am I doing that?
Kind of, if we're like talking about setups too, another rabbit hole that I feel like that a lot of people don't go down is where your D loop is on your bow has a massive difference with how it aims.
Really?
Where your D loop is in relation to your essentially where it is in relation to your top cam. So if your D loop is high or low of center, has a huge difference how it points.
Is that like, again, treat us like we're stupid here. Isn't it supposed to be in the right spot?
Like theoretical dead center.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I learned in target archery was that as you move that D loop closer to the top cam, you're essentially grabbing the string higher.
Yep.
That it essentially changes how good it holds up in the dot. So I'll actually put the D loop on the bow. And Josh is doing this now too. He put out a really good long form video on it. But basically that D loop, I'll put if I get like a Hoyt like hunting bow, I know where I got a trial and error. But
sure, freaking brought my bow.
If that I'll put a D loop on, and like the burger hole that your rest goes on with, I'll have like the bottom of my arrow through the center of that or even above it. So high of center like that, I have found actually allows it to aim better for me because you're essentially grabbing the string higher Versus imagine if you tried to grab the bowstring, we'll say dramatically 3 inches below the D loop.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
all
super
over.
top heavy. It essentially, the best analogy would be, it would make it feel essentially less top heavy, like grabbing the string higher with where that D loop is. And then also what that tells me is like with stabilization, because we have like side bars, front bars with everything we have with the stabilizer line. It allows for me to curate that weight to minimize how much weight I need to optimize how it aims. Because the biggest thing with aiming is, in comfort for me, is getting a bow to aim super well. Where the D loop is and the draw length of the bow are the two most important things. If you don't get those two things right, it's really difficult.
You said the length of the bow,
the draw length,
draw length, and
yeah.
the,
So like you're essentially the D loop length and then the draw length with how your alignment is. Because if you're essentially, your rear elbow is over rotated or under rotated, I have found that for me personally, and I've like translated that to other people to try it, makes a big difference with how it aims. Because if you can't keep the longer you can keep the pin to stay and the slower it stays in the dot, the more comfortable you are. So it's just trying to find, again, game of percentages is archery. Like, how can I maximize 5%? And those are just a couple, kind of while we're on the topic of, that's another thing to toss out there to get people's minds wrapped around it. I
feel like there's a lot of ways to become a better archer and bow hunter.
Oh my word, absolutely. I mean, dude, I notice on a day-to-day basis, it's like there's days that I'm just on. I'm like, I can't, and I'm like, why can't I just feel like that?
When you figure it out, let me know.
Yeah, I assume everybody has that.
Yeah, man. There's days that you just, like you said, you just can't miss. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just,
and it feels right too. You're just like, I can see that. I get just like,
I've had
a rhythm.
Shot events where, like, you'd have a killer day and then go out the next day and just like stink it up, and you're like, how is this possible? But then it's like, kind of even thought, I'm like, is it what you ate? Is it the timing of your eating? Like with the, like, I don't know. I'm not like a.
Well, dude, that's like, a big thing. Check this out. You might enjoy this. So this would be like a physical fitness thing here. I learned about like hyper oxygenating your blood through I think yoga, probably. Or even like it might have been a Wim Hof thing. Have you heard of like what that is? Hyper oxygenating your blood?
Like Wim Hof breathing, I've heard of.
You heard of that?
Yeah.
So like one of the most basic practices, I was fairly shallow. I'm not like an expert in anything, but it's hyper oxygenating your blood. So putting more oxygen in it than it needs so that you can like do something over an extended period of time without having to breathe excessively. So the act of that is big breaths beforehand. So, and you can do them slower than that too. So like I translate that now to working out, like before a set. What that will do for you, and we won't do it right now, but like if you did that right now, exactly like that for like 30 seconds, you would let your last breath out and you wouldn't feel that sensation of having to breathe for like a minute or 2 minutes.
Interesting.
It's gone because it's all in your blood. Your blood is hyper oxygen. It has more than it needs, so that chemical going back to your brain to tell you to breathe is like it's just not there. And so I do that shallow level. I just do it 1 or 2 deep breaths before or as you're drawing your bow there. And I do notice for sure, the more aware of that you are, I think you're kind of aware of like your depleting oxygen level in your blood. And as it starts to like come down a little bit, you start, panic starts to set in. You start to get a little bit shaky. And so the more you can oxygenate your blood beforehand, the more holding and steadiness power I think that you have.
For sure. I mean, that's a and
check that one out.
I'll give that a try. Yeah, maybe if I shoot an event next year or something, I'll have to give it a try.
Well, do it. I mean, dude, whenever, just try that out.
Yeah,
dude, breath work is really, really interesting. It's like one of the most understudied things, I think.
Oh, I'm sure I bet there's probably more literature coming out about it now that I feel like it's kind of turned.
There's a lot of stuff around that, and like heart rate, especially for like long range snipers and stuff like that. Like I've spent a lot of time with those guys, and like they'll in a lot of cases like their heart rates are like in the 40s, on a beats per minute standpoint. Just trying to really like slow it down as much as possible from a calm standpoint.
Google, both you guys, Google later on that Wim Hof is, I think it's WIMHOFF. He's beating all these like
the Iceman or whatever. He does like all the cold plunge stuff.
He doesn't like look impressive or anything. He doesn't look like he's an exceptional. It's all like breath work.
Dang. Interesting.
And he's just like holding his, like going underwater.
I'm
for
telling
dives
you, it will blow your mind. If you do that like little exercise there, I mean, I do it supervised because the first time it scared me how long I could didn't feel like I had to breathe.
Interesting.
It's nuts. It's nuts. But then you figure out what you're capable of. You know, you're like, I have this ability to like hold my breath for 5 minutes straight. I'm serious. Like,
I believe you.
Just through like that technique, and it's kind of cool.
Damn,
it changed the way that I lift weights for sure. Because like beforehand, I was like, I don't know, you just breathe throughout the exercise and stuff. Now I'm like, before every set, I'll take 2 or 3. Like all the way out, all like big breaths, and then I'm like, I don't have to breathe until my 5th or 6th rep.
Wow,
dang,
interesting.
We'll have to try that at Snowbird. See who can hold the longest.
We'll be at altitude there too, so don't pass out.
And it doesn't necessarily translate to like I'm not a draw early guy at all. I'm like draw and I want to get it
on the
off.
way. Yeah,
I'm not interested in holding that thing for longer than like 10 seconds if I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm with it. Just shot breaks down. You know what I mean? Like, even when I was shooting like indoor archery, especially like the 20-yard stuff, it's all timed. I would try to do that in my training because I was notorious for running the clock down. If you run the clock down, it's a 0. So trying to like get that to the same timing, like getting your rhythm, like you said about like you're just in a rhythm, like to where there's just like a flow that you can get up there and you get your 3 arrows off. It just makes seems like it's what's most optimum. Holding long, I always miss low left.
Really?
I mean, it's just I can about guarantee where it's going to go if I aim too long.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't like that. Panic starts to set in. Then you start realizing you're holding too long, and then you're like
contemplating punching it.
Yeah, exactly. Punching it or letting down or whatever.
Real.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how you catch yourself contemplating punching it? Is exactly what that is. You're like, I almost just pulled the trigger for no reason.
That's why I shoot a hinge.
Yeah, I gotta send this thing. Yeah.
Is that what you shoot? It's like a true.
Yeah, just like a back tension with a click.
Yeah, you hunt with that too.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
all the time.
Gotta get Jeremy on that boat there.
I'm just straight triggering it.
Yeah, you shoot good though.
Yeah, this is how I've always shot.
Wait till we get that third axis set. He's
he's gonna be out of this world.
I'm gonna be off, not shooting left anymore.
I'm super curious to see like where mine is kind of at. I haven't really dug into that before.
Yeah, I mean that was the first. I just figured because I don't shoot 80 and 100 yards all the time. I was like, I just pulled it a little left. I don't know.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Mountain Tough.
Man, as everybody knows, physical fitness is super important to both you and I, Jared. And so whether it's training for the Badlands so that we can pack out a muley or our weekly whitetail hunts, the thing that we don't want is to be a big piece of shit in the woods this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, even just in our daily lives, whether we're planting food plots, running our businesses, spending time with our family, we just want to feel good. And that all starts with physical fitness.
Yep. So this year we're partnering with the Mountain Tough app, cool new app that you can go in. You can do rucking, you can do weighted vests, you can do minimal gear, but basically the app has both coached and self-guided courses, anything and everything you need to be mentally and physically tough for this hunting season.
And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, on the Mountain Tough website. That's mtntough.com. It does have to be the website. It can't be either of the app stores to get that discount applied. You get a free 2-week trial anyway, so anybody can go on and use that. But while you're signing up, use that code HUNTR. You'll get an additional free month after that trial period to use the app. That's a total of 6 weeks. That's a huge savings.
So this season, get Mountain Tough.
I mean, dude, are there any other like big things that you think people are missing, like that you would take from like the target archery world and translate to the hunting world that people are doing wrong?
Wrong's a relative term for sure, because I think that it's just repeatability.
Yeah.
I think third axis is a big one. But again, if you find something that works for you, like just that's the biggest thing. I would say draw length is probably what I would attribute as the biggest thing that I like at tack. That I see like other people that I feel like that, hey, if it works for them, they're comfortable. That's all that matters. But
I think most people are too long.
It's hard to tell. You know what I mean? It's just so, I'd say it's a 50-50 split, but almost just looking and it's just like you see room like it could maybe optimize that might help them, and they might be like, I hate this, and that's obviously fine too.
Yeah.
But I think that they would find that anybody that has a way too short or way too long of a draw length, that getting it to where your body is in good alignment. Like if you even look at like, like recurve archers, for example, like Brady Ellison, he's a good friend of mine. I mean, he's been, super dedicated recurve Olympian. Like if you watch like his alignment, like his elbow being perfectly in line with the arrow shaft, right down his front arm. I mean, everything is just so stacked. I mean, it just is like the way that it looks like it should be, and trying to replicate that in archery. And like that wasn't something he had kind of actually taught me back when I was shooting like competitive archery, is like he tries had told me like he tries to move like a body part. Like instead, like people like, oh, let me just back tent, let me move my scapula or try to tighten that muscle. It just really is, and that it really stuck with me. He probably doesn't remember telling me that, but it was just more of a trying to move like, this whole subsystem of your body.
Right.
And it's really hard to accomplish that if you're like really bound up this way too short, or if you're like really overextended, then there's nowhere to go. So you're just kind of stuck. And then that's when you start, people start punching because they're kind of compensating for a misalignment. And it's just like, I'm sure there's the same thing in golf and other sports, that there's an optimum way to do it, and like 10% either way is going to still, if you can repeat it, but there's like a sweet spot that is just optimized. What I feel like is just like your biomechanics of your body, to where you can just get in that position that you have the leverage to fire the arrow most effectively. And without the leverage being too long or too short, you're just essentially, taking away what could be an edge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the big one for me was always, and it's gotten better over the years, is like, when I was a kid, it's like you always wear like your dad, all your clothes are oversized and stuff. Yeah. And it's just like, I felt like I could never, no matter what I did, I would shoot my bow all summer, like lights out, didn't have target panic at that time. There was no anxiety. But then I would go and hunt, and I had all these layers, all this bulk, like face mask type thing. And I'm like, I just could never replicate my practice like in the woods. And at a certain point it improved, like when you have clothes that fit type of thing. And at some point I switched to a thumb button release, as opposed to, not that that's, you're doing great with that, but I just even today I feel like there's a lot of guys that probably just accept that because of whatever the layers of gear that they put on, like the fact that I'm leaning against something in a tree to stand 9 times out of 10, it's just like their yardage is going to be reduced, or there's going to be things you can't replicate in the practice 100%.
Sense. And that's where I feel like alignment, I feel like it just gives you some points on the board of an edge. You know what I mean? Of like, edge may be the wrong word, but just optimizes that in those uncomfortable situations that you can still be as accurate as possible. Because if you're super long draw length, like an analogy there for kind of like to close that thought of like, me shooting too short of a draw length, especially like target world, like I would move my draw length like a 16th or an 1/8 of an inch. Wow. And I could notice a massive difference. Wow. Heck, like right before TAC and PA, like Josh, we were chatting, we were talking through like some things with his setup of how he was like, what he was seeing. And I think I told him like, tie your D loop like an 1/8 of an inch longer. And he's like, dude, that was like, because like I had learned that from target archery. Somebody taught me that. And I'm like, that analogy of what he was experiencing. But if I'm too short a draw length, my sight picture is really fast. So like it's on the dot, off the dot, on the dot, off the dot, like bang, 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 like back and forth. That's normally too short of a draw length. And I've translated that to people, and they're like, okay, I see the same thing. Or like when I was shooting target archery, like I said, I was literally shooting with like, I never got to be like where I was like the best in the world or anything like that. I did good at some events, and I had a good run, but there were some guys like, just super decorated, like their whole life they shot, and I would just like bounce some things off of there, and it was just like it translated to them too. And it was like, so too short on the dot, off the dot, too long is more of a like it'll go through it and really slow.
Takes so it's like time to come back around.
Exactly. It's like short's fidgety, long is like a really slow big sight picture, but a short draw length is a small fast sight picture. You want something in between. So then that way, and again, that's me. Does that work for everybody?
But that's all very draw length oriented.
Correct. Sight picture is draw length oriented 100% in my opinion. And then stabilization is a way to maximize sight picture. So you get it in where you want it with draw length, and then like sidebar and front bar weight and orientation is to really hone that. And it's kind of like draw length is like a gang adjustment, and then stabilization is really refining that. You can still get a great sight picture with bad draw length with stabilization, but it's just a more efficient path when you get a really good foundation. You can't build a house with like a bad foundation. Right. Like setting up a bow, if the draw length is bad, well then it's really difficult. You just kind of set yourself up for a little bit more effort when because you essentially start with what I would prefer to as personally like a bad foundation, and then you can still build a nice house, but it just takes a little more effort.
What do you think is so like Jeremy and I unashamedly, like we get most of our stuff done at the shop just because we've been fortunate to have those guys there. It's served us really well, and we find ourselves spending more of our time, like we said early on, like on the food plots and stuff.
Yeah, because like it's super fascinating. It's like, man, I don't know if I can fit one more like addiction like that in my life type of, you know what I mean? Like once you probably start diving in and you've got presses and like you're doing all, like seems really cool.
It takes something like a tack event or something, or shooting with somebody who's way better than you to be like, oh, there's a lot I could learn here, and I can see the translation to like what I love, which is killing big bucks. I mean, that's what we all want to do, you know? And so I think that motivates you to, have conversations like these to where we can learn. I was going to ask you though, as far as like, what we're doing versus, some guys are setting up their own stuff like literally from scratch. And my fear in that, I'm like, I'll just never have the baseline knowledge that you do or that Tim does at the shop. So I'm like, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot by doing that, but like maybe there's some like at home things that I want to improve on. Is there online stuff that you recommend? You're like, hey, go check a YouTube channel. Is there certain people that you like to say, hey, there's some really cool things that you can do?
Yeah, so I know that Josh has put out some really good long form stuff in the recent time on the setup side, because I think he was getting a ton of interest in that on his YouTube channel and Instagram of people just like really consuming that content. I think it's just getting more the DIY guy, like because information is so available in the world we live in now, and that's where it's like the little stuff is just kind of just start, man. I mean, that's how I did back in the day when I was getting into competitive archery. I'm like, well,
start messing with stuff.
Just start tinkering, and there's a lot of online resources that it's just Google's a powerful thing, right? And what I did was I took a little from a lot of people. Like I was quote unquote self-taught, but like I didn't get there by I did wake up and I learned all this. It was like I would pick people's brain and like ask, 100%. And I'm like, that sounds like a reasonable thing to try. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in every sport. Like you talk to people that are better than you, which is what I did, and then I would ask targeted questions and then get some feedback, and I'm like, that sounds like something that I don't think I want to try, or like, I'm going to give this a shot. Then I would just like kind of condense it down into kind of what I found and just kind of get a direction and go from there.
That's been what's so fun about this podcast. We get to talk to a lot of people, not always on the archery side. I think more recently we've talked to some guys that are really knowledgeable in the archery stuff, but from like a habitat management standpoint, because we've been invested for that for a long time. We've talked to a lot like the greats, people whose opinion we really respect. And it's interesting how you get different takes on different things.
For sure.
And Jeremy and I have each other, fortunately, to be able to like look at each other even across the table, and we're like, what do you mean? Like, would we try that? Or and we can flesh it out, and then we go try it, and then we figure out, and through our own trial and error, we can find things that do work. And that's absolutely the way to do it.
100%.
Take and put it through your own filter,
Exactly.
Don't just take everything at face value, but
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it too, just from we've talked about this before, is it does seem like more and more there's this hard line between archery and bow hunting, and that like I would say that not all, but a lot of bow hunters, they just August they'll go out, shoot some arrows, like, yeah, I'm on whatever paper plate type style. And then they go out and they hunt, right? And like, there's a middle ground there of people who probably like us, who maybe we don't necessarily are working on our bows, but we definitely shoot a lot more. And just like this conversation, we're intrigued by a lot of that more, to be able to be that kind of hybrid guy. Like ultimately, like I'd never say that I'm just like an archery guy, right? I'm a bow hunter. That's why I started shooting a bow. That's why I keep shooting a bow. But like just being able to understand, I think like that's been always a big thing for me, of like, man, I wish I just understood more of this stuff, of why this or why that.
It's just another component to like the sport that we love. It's not even that there's it's just, we just all want to be better bow hunters. I mean, not all archers are bow hunters, I'm not saying that, but like that's one aspect of the craft that we're like, I want to be better at.
Yeah. Well, and just going out and shooting the bow, whether it's in your backyard or attack, is like it's just a good like headspace to be in. Yeah. Like I like just being able to walk out my backyard and shoot from 20 to 80, and like maybe I'll shoot 60 arrows in a night, or 10 arrows and whatever.
It's a good feeling, man. There's nothing like being able to freaking fling a stick of carbon like 80 yards and be able to hit something like this. Like that's pretty cool.
It is cool, and there's a saying. It's like I don't know who said it, but like bow hunting is like the history of mankind, or like I feel like Rogan has said about it before. Like it's like when people shoot an arrow for the first time, it's like you've done it before.
You know
what I mean? It's very ingrained in like human nature. So and it's so relatable, because like you see, like you said, not all archers are bow hunters. Obviously, we would love them to be, but it's it's just such a fun, challenging sport, which is probably why people like golf, because it's so, how is it possible that I can take this stick of carbon and shoot it across that field and hit what I was aiming at? It's just such a feeling of just, you can't repeat it.
Well, frankly, it blew my mind the first time. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't the first time I heard that, but the first time we fleshed it out was with Greg Poole not long ago. We were like, and he's like, oh yeah, the statistics are like, there's like at least 3 times the number of archers than there are bow hunters.
Just like recreational archers.
And us coming from a bow hunting fan, like, we're hunters first.
I mean, Western PA, it's like you shoot archery to go
bow hunt,
to deer hunt. It's just what you do.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what everyone did.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, yeah, all the archers that aren't bow hunter. I was like, who? And he's like, like most people. I'm like, holy cow, I had like no idea.
I wouldn't have thought the statistic was that different.
It was
that
really
different.
high. Yeah.
Wow.
Really high. And I think that was worldwide, which makes sense because like
That's
as
fair.
you get into like the European countries and stuff, like hunting's
I
a
bet
whole
that
different.
would be skewed pretty differently in
Yeah,
America.
but like here in the U.S., I don't know. Now, the archery in the schools program is a big one, and I think there are a lot of people probably shooting target that, they don't go and hunt because they're just not in a hunting family.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have to think that it's somewhat of a gateway, right, to like eventually being like, I should go bow hunt.
It was just like our conversation this morning with Kevin. We were talking about, I was like, I'm a consumptive user, not like a, and I think just to shoot a target, I'm like, that's great. But like, I want to kill something.
Yeah.
I'm ready to put this to practice,
Yeah. It's a cool thing, man. I think that you guys, I think, in addition to the product side, you and Josh obviously have a ton of information and knowledge to share that I think people would be sponges to.
Yeah, and for sure, and even like this conversation, it's like, I've just been, I mean, this is how I got into this, right? This side of it, and like learning how to optimize archery. But it's something that if, I definitely want to put some effort into putting out some more of that information for people to consume. If you guys think that, obviously as well, that especially Third Axis, but kind of putting it out there.
I think you need a Beast podcast.
Beast podcast.
Yeah, or just even if it's just like a
30-minute
like a beast archery tips type of thing, and their little 5-minute thing of going through like the Third Axis.
Yeah, I mean that's a good idea.
We'll sponsor you guys.
We'll sponsor you.
little collab.
Little collab, yeah. But I think mainly because what you guys are building, and maybe you're gonna do some just archery stuff as well. But from a bow hunting side, those are the guys who are going to be hungry for the knowledge.
For sure. And I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, the broadhead's just literally the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I would love to sit here. I wish if I had loved to spill all of our what we got, but there's
more on the way.
Lots of stuff in the pipeline. I mean, we literally we weren't just working on a broadhead all this time. We've got a lot of stuff, and it's more of a things that we know.
Can you say anything? Is any of that on the horizon? Or I won't get you in trouble. This is not live.
Little wink, wink. 100 grain titanium's up next.
That's coming,
but we got some more drops coming this summer for sure. I'll give a little snippet of that.
Cool.
But summer fall time frame, we've got a lot of products in the pipeline. But at the same time, I think Elon says his bet prototyping is easy, manufacturing is hard.
Right.
Yeah,
it's just mad respect to every business owner in the world who is in the manufacturing space. It's difficult. I mean, it's just trying to meet demand and the problems that come up. So that's just the side of it that if we could have a magic wand and can get stuff manufactured at massive scale instantly,
right,
that takes time. So but we're gonna make sure it's perfect, and we're gonna to our standards, and we're not stopping at broadheads for sure. We're gonna keep our foot on the gas, and anything we can see that we know our knowledge and our expertise can improve, we're gonna absolutely pursue it and see where this company goes. But we want to be the largest archery company in the world. Is the goal, broadhead company especially, and
yeah, man.
I think you guys are well on your way. And I think this conversation will be eye-opening for a lot of people, too. A lot of people are probably like, how does Josh know all this stuff about archery, and all these tips and tricks?
Yeah.
And not that you taught him everything he's ever known type of a thing, but like I think that this relationship it gives people a lot of context. Of
for sure. I mean,
David and Josh are working together.
Absolutely. bilaterally, for sure. Where
I know, I thought that. I'm like, how the frick does he, where's he getting this stuff from? And
yeah,
people
or
would tell
even
me,
just the time. I'm like, how does he have all this time? Like, how's he making this stuff?
Right. Well, and people would tell me, they'd be like, well, yeah, it's because David's involved on the back end there, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh.
We've heard that for quite a while. This podcast has been a long time coming. Even just meeting up at TAC, because it was like, I think it was even way before we were in Iowa last year. It was like, Hauser's there. He's really the engineer, and it's like, who is this dude? Like, we really, like, we knew who you were from the target side, but we're like, we're going to meet this guy and, like, have a conversation if he's that involved in it. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I think it was cool. And, dude, we appreciate the relationships and partnerships. And we had a blast shooting tack up here at Seven Springs with you guys.
We couldn't be happier to have you guys on the team. I remember Josh called me right after you killed that deer on his farm, and he sent me the video. He's like, dude, the guys from the Hunter, because I listened to that podcast you guys did with him, one of the first ones, because that was the first I'd like heard about you guys, and he's like, dude, he just killed a mega on my farm, but he's like, he used the titanium. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
And then that was it. Kind of just went from there, and it was.
I told you. Did I tell you how that kind of happened?
Oh yeah, he told me, and then you relayed it back.
Dude, that tailgate session though, like that night when Jared came back and Josh came from wherever he was hunting, I came from where I was hunting to meet, and we were doing, it was election night. We were doing a live podcast like within 15 minutes. Like it was a pretty intense, like just three guys just sitting around like in awe of this thing of like what just happened.
It was a dream. Yeah, I mean that's what you.
It was really cool.
Here was it's just some pictures real quick from where we were there. That was the tailgate session.
That's awesome, dude.
There's probably one with there you go. the double biceps there.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was
yeah, man, it was cool. It was just having you guys on the team too. Is he told me, he's like, dude, the HUNTR Podcast guys. I'm like, Team Beast, we're doing it. We got to get them in the game.
You got us, man. We're in.
Yeah,
we
dude.
Couldn't be happier.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, obviously, like we just knowing Josh and having the conversations, like we believed in the product, but like your breakdown there was pretty freaking, not to take this, but like epic. It was just
appreciate it.
Like just understanding the technology around that. I mean,
and we could talk for days about it. Like it was like just all of the technology baked in there that we have with the, even the quality of the parts that go into it. It's just it was a marathon, and
frankly, I've never heard it explained that way by any other broadhead company. You know what I mean? That alone is going to give, that gives me the confidence that I already felt like I had, just because, I mean, dude, a lot of people look and say, like, if you know Josh, you're like, he's not going to shoot anything less than the best. You know what I mean? He's going to turn out something. That's it.
He wants to make the best stuff selfishly so that he has the best stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, 100%, because like he goes on life-threatening hunts all the time. It's like it has to be the best, and like and that's where even like it, it's to say a standard of excellence of like, we are going to be the best because we're going to put in the work, we're going to put in the time, we're going to do what it takes, and we're going to make sure that we don't leave anything on the table at the end of the day. And like I said before in the podcast here, that I feel like we did, man. And the technology with the reserving the kinetic energy of hitting that bone, especially at low poundage, because normally you go in and break both those ribs, and even like the impact paradox of like hitting the animal and as it enters and through the organs and the sharpness of the blades with the hemorrhaging, as we all covered, there's just, optimizes your probability of recovering that animal. Because, we say it all the time that every broadhead, if you shoot something in the lungs, and there's a lot of great heads out there, you shoot something double longer in the heart, and that would work with a field point.
Dead.
But a broadhead earns its weight on a suboptimum shot, heat of the moment, not where you want to hit it. The deer
where
takes
you need
a step.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean that's not to, you pointed it out, but that deer, this
case in point,
that forgiveness and maximizing your in fairness of the animal and the efficacy of bow hunting. It's what Beast is made for. So
yeah, no, it's awesome, man. I mean, that's what we always talk about when people ask us about shooting. The expandable side of things. It's like, we just want to use the best broadhead that's durable, and it's going to create the most trauma and be forgiving when it needs to be forgiving. If you can check those boxes, I don't know why you'd shoot anything else.
100%. And even like with the accuracy side of things, like, another snidbit of the technology in there is we actually took a field tip. That's like the level that we went to of designing it, is we took a field tip, and I designed that in SolidWorks in the CAD program. And then what I could do with that is I can pinpoint the center of mass, which is essentially the balance point. If I took that on a needle, where that would balance a field tip on a needle, hypothetically. So what we did was, in the design phase, is we matched that center of mass of a field tip within a few millimeters of the broadhead. The reason being is that a lot of times guys will shoot a field tip and then put the broadhead in, and they hit way different downrange.
Most guys do. They just never see it hit downrange different. They just go hunt.
But the reason that it does is twofold, is because of the drag on the exposed blades. A lot of expandables are still an inch wide.
Yep.
So that's why with our curvature of our blade, that maximizes that. but that center of mass essentially keeps the weight at the same distance from the end of your insert. So a long ferrule, if that center of mass moves further away, it changes how the arrow porpoises, changes the dynamic spine, and it essentially changes your tune.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is like if your broadhead's way longer than your field tip, field tip center of mass versus the broadhead. If the broadhead's further away, it has more leverage on the end of the insert. More leverage essentially, i.e. makes it act heavier. But if you go from a 100 grain to a heavier point, it changes your tune. Change your tune, you're shooting on the buck of a lifetime. Make a subpar shot with bad tune. I mean, it's just a recipe. It's a recipe for.
I think it happens a lot because I mean, how many people just shoot and then, I don't know, just pick whatever broadhead they want, put it on. They don't ever shoot it. They just go hunt, right? Yeah. And then potentially, maybe not even their fault, they make a poor shot, and they're like, oh, you know, what'd I do? I pulled that.
Buck fever.
Yeah, it was buck fever. No, and it simply was because it was out of tune.
100%. And it's like, and that's where unless you shoot all your broadheads through paper with, you know, check and, you know, can a lot of those you shoot through paper and get an accurate representation. Because like Josh shot a kudu at like 127 yards with that titanium. First time that broadhead was ever fired. Threaded on his arrow, hits the dot at 100.
Wow.
And I got to give Gillingham, he was a skeptic on the accuracy of them. We saw him at Snowbird last year, and we gave him some broadheads, and he's like, there's no way this is going to hit with my field tip. Thanks thanks for the shout out there, Tim. But he shot them, and he texted me, he's like, dude, he's like, these hit at 140. He's like,
why did he think they wouldn't?
Just because I don't know
the blade profile.
I mean, you know, it might be a bold statement. I don't know if it's ever really been done to where you can take an expandable out of the package and hit the dot.
It's not ever going to match exactly what a field tip's going to be.
But because the center of mass where it is, plus the curvature of the blades for aerodynamics, because that's what you notice. Like almost every broadhead expandable in the world has a straight blade.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Because it's cheaper and faster a lot of times. Our manufacturer fought with us on a curved blade
because it took more work from there.
Way more expensive. Well, like Josh, like we have to have it. But through that curved blade, it optimizes the accuracy because of the essentially airfoil shape you create because of the curvature of the blade. But the other side of that is every scalpel, every chef's knife, all have the same curvature. At the tip.
Yeah.
Because the curved blade has more slicing power than a flat blade. We found like studies from, like we consumed every research paper we could find about this as we went through the process. And we found one, I think it was from like MIT, about like, you know, shear sliceability with a gel substance that was correlated to like the knife industry. And the curved blade versus the straight blade had a monumental difference. And a flat blade because essentially distributes the force over the entire length of the blade. Where at a curved blade, it's concentrated at the leading edge, touching the animal. And it's just like slicing is basically just like, you know, a crack in concrete. You can't get it to stop. Once you open a slice, it's the same concept. That's why a curved blade's more powerful than a straight blade in a slicing application.
Last thing on the broad, because I know we're back on the technology of it here. I've heard Josh say a few times about like cutting to the molecular level. I don't know. I can't get that out there. But as far as like the sharpness of this compared to some others, and I'm like, I think I've seen that. I think I've witnessed it. But like, what does that mean?
So I think what he's referring to, like what you're referring to with that, is like I said, the hemorrhaging the blood trails with stuff that first time was absolutely absurd. And like the analogy there is like if you ever cut yourself with something incredibly sharp, you can't get to stop bleeding.
Yeah.
Same thing if you cut yourself with something dull, it doesn't bleed as bad. The reason that, you know, that happens is that it's just like slicing.
That's a fact, right? That does happen.
That's a fact.
Okay.
It's like slicing versus tearing. versus tearing a steak, for example. And just with like the blood vessels, like you're cutting them so cleanly at the cross section where they're not getting pulled and stretched and then essentially torn or cut. Yeah. So that taper, and it's just that the blood loss is just so much different. And everybo's done this. You cut yourself with something really, really sharp. You don't feel it, and it just bleeds and bleeds and bleeds.
You don't feel it. That's the other thing. It's like
cut myself with a Beast Broadhead.
That's why I've been sitting here.
And it bled forever.
I've been sitting here protected the whole thing just in case one gets me.
It's smart. We should wear protection on this whole podcast.
I gotcha. So.
Everybody protected.
Well, dude, I mean, you know, everybody's got their own picks and choose and bias, but I mean, I don't think anybody listening to this can deny the fact of the quality and the research and stuff that's gone into that. And yeah, I think that you're a different person here than Josh would be. But you know, when we had those podcasts with Josh, it was very much, you know, especially the first one, was us just like getting to know who this guy is, right? Because there's so many stereotypes about Josh and what people think. And I think the one thing that every time we talk to someone, they're like, oh, you know, it's like, well, dude, Josh isn't going to make anything that's subpar because he wants the best selfishly for himself. Like that's the mindset. And I think this conversation with your brain behind it from the archery and the engineering side completely reiterates that thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I looking back, we almost joked that we wish we would have filmed some of those early conversations.
Oh, dude, I can't imagine it
like just a fly on the wall of just like the unrelenting demand for excellence.
Yeah,
and it you know, working with him and, you know, being business partners with him has changed my perspective on in a super positive way of just like knowing like what you can get to and just like the level that is there if you ask the right question, especially the vendors, you know, like, oh yeah, do this. And no, like absolutely not. And they're like not used to that. Cause like, well, this is, you know,
people just accept.
They're like, well, this is a lot more expensive. So you don't want that. It's like, we want that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's what I was saying. In the industry, most aren't doing that, right? They are saying like, okay, well, that sounds great, but what can we do cheaper?
Yeah. 100%.
Because it's a margin game.
And all that's going to do is just, that's not like, it's back to the customer first. I mean, they're the most important aspect of the brand, and they mean everything they're the lifeblood of our brand specifically. And we can't, you know, us cheaping out on anything would just be disrespectful and a disservice to not only them, but the animal they're shooting. So quality first, and that'll never change with us.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well,
sincerely,
dude, yeah, we appreciate you coming down, spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
It was just like that, like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Just freaking flies by. Isn't that wild?
First in-person podcast.
Yeah.
I can recall.
Yeah, like I said, I've done some like on Zoom before, but this is the first in the studio setting that.
Well, for what it's worth, dude, you were great.
Well, thank you.
I thought you're just being able to explain and clarity is like I'm just like a fly on the wall, like magneting to this thing, you know. And
nailed it.
I'm sure you'll get a ton of requests from this of like, we need videos on that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's something that honestly, this will be a perfect opportunity to force me to do it, because I'm just so like behind my desk, like grinding it out that like, but I need to like do some of that as well, because I feel like it'll help everybody, and but it's just we've been so in the weeds and in the trenches on that with getting this to where the level it needed to be. And now that I feel like you know we did that, it was the opportunity to do some things.
I mean, dude, Josh knows better than anybody. It's just about like a system and a process. And so like if you guys decide that it's like it's a 15-minute video of you sitting down and just talking about like the thought process behind a third axis, or, you know, why the blades are certain this or that, and putting those out on YouTube, I think will go a long way for you guys.
Right on, man.
I think people will eat them up.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, cool, dude. Well, we appreciate you coming down, and we appreciate Beast partnership for sure. We're stoked to slay some animals.
I'll throw this out one more time. Anybody that wants to pick up a pack can use code HUNTR on the website, HUNTR, for 10-15% off, something like that.
Yep.
And the
100, by the time people are listening to this, the 100 grain titaniums will be out, so that'll be a good one as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me, and it was super fun to sit down and chat about all this, especially Beast, and you guys being on board is just a bonus on top of all that. So thank you for believing in us as well.
You got it, man.
Well, we appreciate everybody listening to this episode of HUNTR Podcast with David Hauser, and we will catch you all next week.
Later.
Take me